Hey there! Thanks for joining us at Flipside Frolic, where we learn to understand each other's perspectives by flipping the script and having some fun. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to Flipside Frolic. I'm your host, Carl Kamick. With us today, we have Ben Wahh, world-renowned, as far as I know, tattoo artist. And we have a bunch of different conversations we're going to go with him, with his art, where he started, and all that sort of thing. So welcome to our home studio. And if you want to just kind of start off with a little introduction about where you grew up, what the life was like, whatever, living in Chicago, or how the art came in, into your life or whatever, and we'll go from there.
Grew up in Beverly on the south side. The last of a few kids there, four. So, lucky enough to have, older brother and sisters with good taste. So, always music playing and books around the house and art. And I'm actually the only one in my family, though, that got into art. And my daughter does music, and same thing with her. There's nobody in my family that does music. And she is extremely passionate about what she does and does great with it. Better than I did with art when I was her age. But it was kind of, being the youngest left me at kind of a way where I could kind of do what I wanted to do, because my parents were pretty burnt out by the time I was around. And they were there to help me, but I had a lot of freedom that I probably wouldn't have had if I was, the second or third kid. But I think definitely, cartoons, movies, but comic books were a huge one. And this local comic book store I happened to be in when I was 13, and I overheard the owner speaking to these kids that were working there, and he asked them what they were supposed to be getting paid, because he was paying them, and one of them said something to the effect of $4.50 an hour, and he was like, $4.50 an hour? I never agreed to that. And I just had the whatever to speak up and say, I'll do it for $3.50, and he goes, you're hired. And just like that, I was part of the insanity there. And this guy and his family were so great to me, and I still speak to, well, he's dead now, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Frank. But I still talk to his family all the time. And being in that environment around, immersed in the comic book world was awesome. It was being behind the counter, 13, 14, being, having all the adult stuff I could look at, all the more advanced thinking stuff. Definitely was able to broaden my horizons at a young age. There was one magazine they're called fanzines, and those are the ones that are made with articles about comics or interviews. And this one was a guide on how to make your own fanzine. And so at 14, I saw this, and I was like, well, it's pretty cool. I'll try. And you could also list yours in there for sale or trade. And trade would mean people would send you theirs, and you'd send them yours. And this recently came up because I was contacted a few days ago by a guy who was like, is this Ben Lewis that used to make the comic book Troubleshooter? And I'm like, who the hell is this guy, and how did he find me? And sure enough, he had one of the comics I made when I was 14. I am currently 52, so that's kind of weird. I don't know how he tracked me down, but he did. And yeah, he's really into all these. I guess there's a whole thing right now, revival of interest in those fanzines from that era. And so I have tons of them.
Was that the recent post where somebody?
Yeah.
I saw something about somebody came up or found something on eBay or something for $7 or whatever it was.
Yeah, he found it on eBay. Somebody had already bought it, and he's like, "Oh, the art looks really cool. I want one of these. Do you still have any?" Like, no. But I had some other ones. I actually mailed them to him today. But that was amazing, because from the comic book store, I would work at comic book conventions and get to, meet the artists of all these comic books I was a fan of, talk to them, meet these other artists that were doing fanzines, meet them in person. We would trade through the mail, but then you get to meet them in person at these things and communicate with them. So that was really cool. I actually still communicate with a bunch of them thanks to Facebook. So that's really cool.
Awesome. So I didn't really do the comic book stuff. Sorry about little pooches barking up there, but it's amazing how those different little niches of young kids and what they're interested in or whatever. But obviously the art is inspiring
and there's just so many different varieties. But so were you always into comic books, or that was kind of like why you walked into the store because you were kind of already into it, and then you just kind of jumped in and
well, so then my focus was I want to be a comic book artist. Yeah, I really didn't have any kind of anyone around me to kind of pinpoint or help me with my art or help me, to be a comic artist, you really have to be very well trained. I mean, not so much now with AI and everything and people doing things on iPads, but back then it was an extremely disciplined, direction to go. And I had a friend who was doing like really great comic art, I thought. And I went with him to a convention and witnessed him speaking to these companies, trying to get a job. And the things they were telling him made me not want to do comics. They want you to basically be an art robot. They want nobody to have any kind of character to them. Everything has to look very bland, fit the mold. You're not supposed to go off the rails. There's a few select artists that have that ability to do that because their numbers had
once they build a name enough for themselves, almost like a sitcom or a comedian or anything else, that once you get to the point where you could demand some stuff or have true creativity.
But the majority of them were not that. And, you're basically an art slave. And when I saw that and witnessed what they were telling him, I was like, wah, wah, wah. So then I was at a loss, like, what the heck am I going to do with myself? And my family were all Board of Ed, worked for the city. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll be an art teacher, I'll go into that. And then I was going to UIC, and it was I started at Moraine Valley, which is a really good school. The teachers were great. Everyone would stay late if they needed to and talk to you and help you, and everything about that school was great. Then I went to UIC, and that's when it was like, because it was lecture halls, go back to your classroom. Usually a student from a foreign country is your teacher assistant that doesn't speak English and would just basically give you answers. It was just terrible. And I understand now as an adult, you jump through their hoops, you get your piece of paper, then people jump through your hoops. That's the way it goes. But young 19, 20-year-old Ben was like, this is effing bullshit. And the final straw was at a class in the anthropology of Japan and China. And it was two papers that were due. One was the first half of your grade, the other was second. And the first was on China. And I had, you read what you're supposed to read for class. You do the research he tells you all this stuff. You write this paper. Fine. Well, I met someone that weekend who just got back from living in China for 5 years. And it was at a party a friend was having, like a welcome home party for this guy. And this came up, and he goes, well, get your paper. I want to read it. So I get it, and he's just laughing. He's like, this is illegal. That's never been legal. I don't know what the hell the guy's talking about here. Like, he's just going to this paper telling me everything we're getting taught is outdated and wrong. And this guy's been living there for 5 years, So I went to class on Monday, and after class tried to talk to my teacher about it, who was an older guy. And when I tried to speak to him after class, he just exploded on me. It was like, I wrote for Encyclopedia Britannica in the 70s, and fine. So I turned the paper in, F. Nothing underlined, nothing circled, just F. Because I dared speak to him like that.
Yeah.
And, I spoke to the people in the offices where I got put in touch with the chancellor, and he basically told me, like, yeah, these guys are their tenure. We can't tell them what to teach. So then I was like, well, I'm getting out of here then, because that's bullshit. And got my money back from my classes and left. And then I was adrift. Like, what am I going to do? And a friend who was the one who was trying to get the job at the comic book world, this guy, Nick Wiggins, he expressed interest in helping me get my foot in the door of tattooing because he was tattooing, and I'd actually turned it down. But then now I was in this position, I reapproached him like, you know what? Let's give it a try. And it was crazy because you have a lot of preconceived notions about things, but then once you get involved with them, you see more than you thought. And it was not easy to get my foot in the door or do anything I wanted to do, but if you persevere and you meet the right people,
So like what were some of the misconceptions or some of the preconceived ideas that you had when you were talking about going into the tattoo world?
Yeah.
And obviously there's some characters involved, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if you're not like into that sort of art or whatever.
Well, tattooing then was extremely different than it is now. I mean, I think 70-80% of the people tattooing now would not have made it a week tattooing then. It was yeah, you dealt with some characters. But I think the biggest one is understanding that it's not about you. Understanding that, you might go into something like this, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. Great. Guess what? You're not tattooing you. You're tattooing them. And
for the rest of their life, in
correct.
a sense. You're right.
And you're not the one who's going to be wearing this rose on your chest. You're not the one who's going to be wearing this barbed wire armband. But they are. And like you said, it's for the rest of their life. So shut the fuck up and do the best job you can and make this person as happy as you can. And, within your abilities. And that's a big thing that was like really eye-opening and kind of relieving in a way, because now the pressure is no longer on you to evolve and create as much as it is to listen and deliver what these people want. And as an artist, a really amazing part of tattooing also is that you know what you like, what artists you like and all that, but you don't know what you don't know. And people come in all the time with art and you're just blown away by it. You're like, what is this? And so it's like this constant exposure to new ideas, new artists, So like I said, you go into it with the one concept that you're going to be doing what you want to do, and then you flip that on its back, and now it's like, your service to the world gets, reciprocated in such a way that you get exposed to a lot of amazing stuff. Also a lot of, shitheads and, drama, people's traumas and dramas, but, it's all part of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's part of the culture for sure. I mean, we were talking a little bit before, because as you walked in, the book, The War of Art, was here on the desk. Right there, yeah. And it is incredible how we were talking a little bit about just art and resistance and some of those points that come in that book. Yeah, I could see how, and in some of that, talking about summoning the muse even, and just trying to find that creative voice inside of us that goes through us, and then so many different artistic people.
A really good book, one of the best I ever read, is this book, Dead Saints Chronicles, and it's by this guy John Allen West, is that his name? But basically, he was a philosopher, Christian type guy, and the book does have a little Christian leaning, which I'm not about, but whatever, it's fine. Who got diagnosed with a chronic brain tumor and was gonna die, and so he started this path of researching near-death experiences and people that die on the operating table or whatever, and see their body, they float out of their body and see it on the slab, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Amazing thing is that, and there's websites that are nothing but testimonials from these people, and it doesn't matter their age, it doesn't matter their background, none of that matters. They all have the almost identical experience, but some of them even have more visions than that. And to speak to what you're saying, one person's vision was seeing the souls of artists from the past guiding the hands of artists in the present, which is a pretty powerful image if you think of it, and like you said about channeling the muse, it's kind of another way to look at that, like kind of this like,
yeah, where is this coming from? Exactly.
And kind of like, if you're chosen or whatever by these spirits to be the one to pass it through you to the world,
And some of what I got out of there is that, because we were talking a little bit about resistance, and in some of the earlier podcast episodes, I had glitches that, are almost designed by the powers that be just to frustrate you, to see if you're serious about doing this thing.
Test you, yeah.
Yeah, and so it seems...
But you know what? And that's the dividing line in the people. The people that are going to, say this is way too much and go back stare at the phone all day and do whatever. The people that are going to persist and say...
break out of the cubicle. And,
I'm going to climb this mountain, and I'm going to climb the next one, and I'm going to climb the next one.
Yeah, that's interesting. This book is... a little bit heavier, but William James, The Varieties of the Religious Experiences.
Okay.
So it's very similar to that, but that was from like the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And that book is a series of like 22 lectures that he did at the University of Cambridge or something, where he categorized all these spiritual experiences that were known at that time from around the world.
Yeah, it's nothing new.
Whether psychedelics or any medications were involved, or whether they were, into drugs or alcohol, or whether it was this or that, accidents or spontaneous, or so all these different things. And it's been a long time since I read it, but it was a tough read because I'm not that smart. There was like maybe 2 or 3 words per paragraph that I should probably look up if I was to do it, because but at the end of the day, it kind of came down to, it really doesn't matter what other people think, or whether they think it was real or not. If you experience something and it helped you to change your life for the better, well then who cares, man? Just roll with it, because somehow it inspired you to move in a different direction, or do a different thing, or not act a certain way, or whatever the case may be. And I've seemed to experience that quite a few times in my life over the years. But just like you said, where the magic comes from, whether there's an ether of all the knowledge in the universe is in this wireless internet that we could tap into, maybe. Whether it's a mentor or somebody chosen as part of their penance to help somebody else in this world after they passed on or whatnot for a certain amount of time.
I mean, you're a father, and so am I, and kids kind of are who they're going to be. You could try to push that triangle in that square, that circular hole, whatever the fuck. You're going to try to push that thing in there all you want. It's not going to go in there. They're going to be who they're going to be. And it's our job to kind of, drive the taxi, get them where they want to go, and try to get them there as safely and the best way we can to our ability. But like I said, my daughter getting into music, like, where the hell did that come from? You know what I mean? Like, we have music on all the time in the house, but to have the passion to actually to focus and dedicate on specific things and put that energy there and not quit. Like me with art. Nobody in my family did art. I had nobody around me to turn to or ask if this is right. You know what I mean? And so I had to kind of persist. And, a big thing I tell people is learning how to learn. And I had to figure that out when it came time to open a business, because I had to navigate one of the biggest puzzles in the world, and that's the city of Chicago legal system. Like, the zoning stuff was, there's what's on paper and then what actually happens. And having to navigate that process with a volatile alderman and, inept lawyers was, at 3 years old when I opened my business was a challenge. But
wow, I can't even imagine that in a sense, because you could have finished that degree in business startup as a specialty, and it still would have done nothing for you when dealing with local politics and ordinances in Chicago. Yeah. So that has to be a major story just in itself.
The main takeaway I learned at that point in my life was learning how to learn. And what that means is you gotta get out of the what you think the world is, and you gotta learn to shut up and just take in, and whatever the world's trying to show you at that moment or teach you, you have to not resist it. You just have to learn from it and move with it. And you can say, well, page 24 subsection 22 says this. Who cares? These guys are gonna do what the hell they want to do. So you need to learn what they want to do and why they want to do it, and learn how to flow with that.
Or try to get ahead of the curve a little bit and be a little proactive in the direction that you think they want to go or something.
Yeah, but you have to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
And this leads to what we were talking about earlier, which is you were talking about you have conversations on here with people that may or may not agree with you and whatever, and you don't know how they come to these. So one of the rabbit holes I've been going down lately is this guy, Walter Lippmann. He was a political writer in the early 1920s, and this is kind of after World War I, and he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and went on to guide and help politicians, including presidents. And his main thing in his first book was about basically human thinking. And human thinking operates like this. You get your set ideas on the way things are. Now that is what you're basing your reality on. Anything that doesn't agree with that, 99% of humans are not going to entertain, because Santa's goddamn real, shut the fuck up, you know? So based on that, if you could influence people and program them the way you want them to think, nothing will derail that. Nothing, you know? And it's pretty crazy, because you can give people objective information that is like the 1 + 1 = 2 objective, and they won't want to hear it if it doesn't agree with what their core beliefs are. And they knew that. And back then, even, you know, there's a quote. I'm going to read it right now, because I was trying to prepare for this, because I was reading about this guy this week. And this is, here it is. Littman said that mass man functioned as a bewildered herd. It must be governed by a specialized class whose interests reach beyond locality. The elite class of intellectuals and experts would be a machinery of knowledge to circumvent the primary defect of democracy, the impossible ideal of the omnicompetent citizen. So, you know, he was preaching to these guys, listen, you can tell them it's a democracy, and they can believe that, but we're going to run this shit.
Well, there's a friend of mine that was a political science, is, I believe, still a political science professor at a local university around here, and asked him to be on the podcast, but he's, you know, pretty set in his ways, so I won't call him out.
Yeah.
But he gave me a book to read, Democracy Now!, which talks a lot about those gatekeepers, that part of the process was the idea of keeping certain people out of the process for the sake of democracy, which sounds like a conflict of interest in some ways, but in their mind, they're protecting themselves from a certain characteristic type that may want to be a king or may want to, you know, take over,
or they
and
could
not give
be
up
saying
power.
that as a justification for not being democratic.
For sure. And then some people on the left or on the right or whatever, but some people on the right that point out that this is a constitutional republic. It's not really a democracy. And then it's kind of funny, because then when you sit down and talk brass tacks with people, populism is not the answer either. So what exactly, everybody throws these isms around: socialism, communism, fascism. And I don't know how many people can actually define what they're actually talking about. So that's why, in a sense, I wanted a political science professor to come in here, just to let's talk about some of these definitions and what they actually are, and what people's preconceived ideas are of what these things are. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think most people really understand. They're just throwing these slurs out there, like, as just assuming it's a bad thing, just to degrade somebody or take away their credibility, when at the end of the day, what's really happening. And so it's funny, because this conversation just came up prior to the start of the podcast, because I was just given the idea of what the premise of Flipside Frolic is, which you guys all heard. And here it is, episode 10 or 11, and the premise of flipping sides and debating the other position hasn't really even happened. So I don't know if I have to push it harder to happen if it happens, but the reality is that when you're sitting across the room from another human being, and you're not texting, or you're not behind some beer balls on a keyboard and just trying to, you know, tear people apart or troll on the internet, which sometimes could be fun. Just poke the bear a little bit and watch the fight, you know, and sometimes it's just amazing that, you know, those sorts of conversations are not helpful. And if you think you're going to change somebody's mind in that atmosphere, when even text messaging is so difficult to even an emoji or two might help. It's better to have some emojis, because people don't, who's this guy talking to? Like, was he joking? If I'm talking to you face to face and I let a little snicker out, you know I'm kidding. So all the different social cues of having a conversation in real life with people are so much different. And it seems that from the past episodes so far, that most of us, we're 99% on the same side of almost every issue.
True.
Common sense prevails.
But division is a business.
And that's what they want.
Yes.
Because that makes us easier to control.
Correct.
People could blame religion, they could blame politics, they can blame whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really about tribalism, fighting over that 2% that we disagree on. So it's almost like I can say something simple like, should there be no religion in school, or should you teach all religions in school? Mm-hmm. Because it's kind of interesting that I can have a 4 or 5-year-old come up to me and say, Dad, why is it that, these religions all seem to be teaching the same thing, and yet we're going to war over that small percentage of things that they disagree on? Mm-hmm. Was Jesus a real man? Was he a prophet?
But
was he this?
Is that even what you're going to war over? That might be the subtext go to war over, but it's not the real reason.
Well, there's a lot of truth in that,
and I think that's
about
what
resources.
The main thing I try to convey, let's say to my kids or whoever I talk to about is, if you look into the real reasons behind a lot of conflicts or the real reasons of why things are, they're not what they are on the face of things. And like this guy Walter Lippmann is saying, when you want to control a population, you want to give them the fairy tale. And you want them to believe in that fairy tale so hard that nothing can derail their belief in that fairy tale. So when you come to find out it's all about greed or resource wars, which it always is, they're never going to be honest about that.
Right.
Never. It'll always be for, we're deposing that bad guy, or we're helping those people. Yeah, you're helping them out of their resources.
For the sake of freedom.
Yeah, that's crock shit.
Well,
but I think that's important to, make, like for me to make my children or my people in my surroundings aware of, because you can make better decisions and conclusions off of truths than you can off of propaganda and exaggerations, lies, manipulation, etc. So, and by all means, if people want to live I have lots of friends that think I'm nuts, that don't respect the way I see things, and that's fine. That's their world. Please live your life. If it's what you get up in the morning and that's what makes your day go by, great. But it doesn't mean I'll ever relent. It doesn't mean I'm going to let them off the hook. But, at the same time, I have respectable conversations with them. I'm not going to say you're a fucking idiot. Or
Start the name calling and all that.
Doesn't do any good.
Nope. Never does.
But, it's funny because I have somebody like, let's say on Facebook or something, tell you, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. But they're still around. They're still chiming in every now and then. It's like, why are you still paying attention if you think I'm an idiot,
Yeah. No, I mean, sometimes, the anger is clickbait and they keep coming back for more, and the algorithms just, because you're interacting with those posts, so now you're going to come up with my feed more. So even just from me sending you a message, it's like I'm seeing more of your posts in my feed, and that's kind of how the algorithm works. We're going to pause for one quick second. I know we still have audio and we're recording, but I'm getting a little flashing thing that's happened before. So let me see what's going on here. One sec.
Sure.
All right, we're back. Sorry about that, folks. All right, well, got a little sidetracked there on our little technos. We were just talking about some of the political tribalism. It's funny how you could turn things around too, where the tribalism, like on sports teams especially, you see that's the most obvious one where we're winning or they suck.
Yeah.
If it's negative, it's against their beliefs, then they separate themselves from that. But when they're winning, hey, we are winning, as if they're part of the team or something, which just...
But, manipulation extends anywhere. It can extend into corporate stuff. It can extend to materialism. Whatever the powers that be, whether that be monetary power or political power or, family power, manipulating your own family through lies. Lies and manipulation. They know no boundaries.
Yeah, and there's obviously, the corporations and the advertisers and everybody else, they spend quite a bit of money on psychological tests and trying to figure out what works and how it works and all that sort of stuff.
There's a great series that came out from the BBC in 2001 called Century of the Self. And you can see it on YouTube. It was a four-part series, 1 hour per episode. But it talks all about how America in its youth, when we first started, were a country of immigrants that didn't speak the same language, didn't get along, didn't like each other. And we actually employed Sigmund Freud to come and figure it out for us. And he uses, him and his nephew, Edward Bernays, were the first to bring that level of manipulation into a mass scale to turn Americans into Americans. And this documentary kind of chronicles how that was brought to being, but not only into societal problems, but how that was later brought into sales and business. And Bernays went on to be an extremely successful advertising person because he brought these techniques into that world. But it's a great series, Century of the Self. It's got a couple lulls in it, but it's worth watching if you want to know the history of that.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. There's another one, even just along some of the same lines, was, I don't know if it was Mind Games or Mind Tricks or something, but it would show even just some of the visual aspects of how the brain can be tricked with shadows and different things to where they would show, some of those kind of online games and different videos you'll see where it was like you'd see the girl and then you'd see this and then you'd count something and then you'd see this and then they'd ask you, did you see the gorilla run across the screen? Yeah. And you just didn't see it because you they got you distracted on certain things and you can only hold one or two things at a time. So some of those are interested in just different colors and different shades and different how you can optical illusions and all that sort of stuff. So even bringing it back to the art in a sense with getting that depth, getting that shadow, getting that color, and really being able to pull that out is something that the eye sees in a different dimension or whatever. But neurological and linguistic programming and some of these other sort of advanced marketing tactics, and like, again, these corporations are spending top dollar to try to figure out how to get you to do what they want you to do, so as long as you're aware of that.
The boundaries go way beyond that.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Awesome. So back to the art, I guess. I mean, I do have some pictures. So now you just got out of the comic book business, and you got into the tattooing world, and you were learning how to get started in a business in Chicago, and obviously more than how many? Because now you have what? You have 10, 12 artists. How many artists do you have working for you?
Something like that, yeah. Some 10, 12. Different people come and go sometimes. So I've had people leave and come back 3 times, Yeah. So it's interesting.
Guest appearance if somebody's looking for their work or whatever.
Yeah, but artists are definitely. I'm a unique person in the way that I, think in a business manner and I'm an artist. But most artists are, artists. They're not thinking in a business manner.
You'd see that in partnerships a lot of times too, where there's the creative and then there's the analytic. Yeah. So one guy would be doing the books and the other guy is having the vision. Yeah. And usually those two relationships work well together as opposed to having 2 artists together. Yeah. That could be kind of chaotic. So
yes. Personalities, all the different people, yes. But that's a really good thing, like I said before, about customers bringing new ideas in. Same with artists, and the first time I had somebody leave who was, really skilled, awesome artist, it really sucked. And I was very like, damn, that's terrible. What am I going to do? How am I going to replace this guy? And I will tell you this, you can make a list of all the qualities you want in a person to walk in that door to have. And somebody will walk in with none of those qualities, but they'll be awesome, Yeah. So again, the universe will come through with like just giving you some amazing stuff.
Yeah, our expectations are, that's like the Garth Brooks song. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers, because my way, a lot of times where I think this is the way it's got to be, and then it doesn't work out that way, but it works out better than it ever would have if it was. Yeah. So that's kind of part of trusting the powers of the universe, or trusting the muse, or trusting trusting the vision or just doing the next right thing and expect, and having a little faith that what's supposed to happen will. And kind of like you were even mentioning that with even raising kids and stuff. So I have 3. You have just the daughter? Two.
Yeah.
And so personalities, we could take, we could do early childhood education, and we could try to educate ourselves in all these different aspects of how to raise a child the right way or whatever. And at the end of the day, love and attention is the only thing that truly matters. And the way that the different personality types really come out, whether they're the firstborn, the secondborn, I laugh about that because in college I took an introduction to psychology class for a prerequisite, and then we're in this chapter and we're reading about families, and then the middle child, Dan was the middle child, my oldest brother was the firstborn, and then I was the youngest, and then we had a sister come 10 years later. So that changed the dynamic. But you're just you're the baby, or all this, and of course the thirdborn gets away with a little bit more than the firstborn does because parents are busy or.
That's me. I was the last. So
out of how many did you have?
4.
4 in yours. So that's similar. And those sorts of things are pretty comical that they're so the point was I was like, where'd I go? But the class is explaining the firstborn, the middle child, and then the lastborn, and the characteristics that they have a tendency to be. And I'm like, wow, they're nailing it. But then it was like in the dysfunctional family section. So I'm like, how is this dysfunctional? That's just the way it was for me. And growing up in the early 80s in grammar school or whatever, it's amazing just how much culture's changing and how many different things are changing, because back then single parents were pretty rare in my neighborhood, on the northwest side of Chicago. And by Cicerone diversity, we grew up and went to Catholic school. So just the fact that I had a mom and dad at home, whether it's from a divorce or an accident or whatever the case may be, why somebody else might not, seemed like that's just normal. So anything that's going on in my house is just the way life is. So of course you just accept that as normal until you learn different, that maybe some things could have been better or different or whatever. So we try to do the best we can. But again, trying to live vicariously through your kids or whatever is funny.
Another thing, though, is the level that kids are being raised by outside influence is now so much more pervasive, where they're inspired by culture or YouTube or whatever it may be, and algorithms feeding them certain things to look at. And it's impossible for a parent to see every little influence on them.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's there. In school, you have even more of that. So, obviously you want to try to communicate as much as you can with them, but ultimately, you can only do what you can do.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, for sure. And then even like you were mentioning, the influence, like I do love music. I always have loved music. I minored in jazz performance in college, and so I do believe that music is really and I think there's some science that backs it up, that it physiologically changes the brain in some ways, by making different pathways and some critical thinking and different skills that could be a benefit of just playing music or learning music or whatever. So I've provided that. I like you try to not spoil your kids, but in the same token, I think the most important thing is if they find something that seems to glow a little bit more of a passion from somewhere. Where does that come from? Again, just like anything else, we don't know what's drawing them to this activity.
I tell people this about my daughter. They're always excited about her music and her, ability. We had her in 22 different weekend and after school things until she found music. Every time it would be like, I want to do this. Okay, cool. Let's do urban dance. 4 weeks, 3 months of urban dance. I don't want to do it anymore. I play soccer now. Great. Let's play soccer. So, sometimes they find it quicker than other times, but, just giving them that, you want to try this? Let's try it. You want to try that? Let's try that.
Yeah. So as a parent, I think that's exactly where even after reading books or this, that, and the other, at the end of the day, our job is just to provide opportunity for experiences. And then for some reason, my kids are in scouts and just getting some outdoor appreciation and archery and leather work, and they do all these different activities at a lot of these different camps and merit badges. So they're getting influence in the primary goal is just leadership building, right? So it's pretty amazing to just provide those different opportunities, and then they say, oh, I like chess, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, and then you kind of provide that opportunity as best you can financially or whatever, because like we got some guitars and we got a drum set, and they get their little kicks, or we had them in hockey for a while, and I mean things you can't just go head first into everything they ever mention. Of course, my daughter is the same way. She's she's 12, but she was doing some horseback riding lessons, and she was doing gymnastics, and she's doing figure skating, and she's doing this and that. And it's like, you could toy around with some of them, but if somebody gets that passion from somewhere, like for instance, pool, it was the same thing. My whole life, I also played pool, mostly in the bars, mostly as an excuse to get out. I never really had enough of that dedication and focus to just sit there and practice for 5 hours, where some people just can't put the thing down for some reason, and where does that come from? Where do they draw that passion for something enough to dedicate that time and energy? Because, it was funny with the pool thing. I had somebody tell me once before, is like, you want to be a professional pool player and play tournaments in Vegas? It's not that hard. It's simple. 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, 10 to 15 months, you'll be there. I almost guarantee it. But again, how do we draw in that passion to sit and practice and to do the put in the work that's required to excel with the skills?
But if you have it, it's effortless, because that's what you want to be at. That's where you want to be. But if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize that. And, instead of, like I said earlier, about trying to force a triangle into a square hole, you know what I mean? You can't do that.
For sure.
But if a kid wants to be, play piano, they're going to sit at that piano and play it all the time. They can't walk by one without stopping and playing on it.
Yeah.
My pool table is in my garage. It's a 2-floor garage called a carriage house, where basically the second floor is a storage. It's an old building. And, I mean, I'll be going to work and I'll run upstairs and hit some balls before I leave. Nice. You know what I mean? I can't not do it. Whereas, my wife will just walk around, get her car and leave.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, oh, I got to go to the store. I got to go here. I got to go to Costco. But I have time to run a couple tables, I'll get up there and hit some balls.
Well, that's awesome. And obviously it's, it's almost like I kind of got golf fever. I did the golf thing for a while. I have been for quite a few years, and it's one of those things where sometimes we just get stubborn and think that we have to figure this out on our own. and just like with pool or with anything else, it seems that, the harder you get beat by somebody better only makes you better, because you don't even understand what's possible sometimes. Like, funny quick story.
Go ahead.
Just one time a shipmate from the Navy invited me down to Indianapolis for the Indianapolis 500 one year, and I went down there, and I'd always play pool for a beer around here or whatnot. And then we go down to this bar there, and there's 2 pool tables, beautiful pool tables, and there's not a quarter on either of the pool tables, and there's 4 foosball tables, and the quarters are lined up on all 4 foosball tables. And I was like, this is weird. This was not a Chicago thing. There was only a select 2 or 3 bars that I could think of that were really hot on foosball in the Chicagoland area, but everybody played pool.
Yeah.
So it was pretty weird. So, of course, I had to do something. So I'd play some games of foosballs and get my butt kicked by somebody, and he'd pull out some keychain where he had some competition thing or something, but you saw what was possible. You saw how they can control the ball. You saw shots that, wow, how did that even work? And then that gives you something to go back and practice or try to figure out or whatever, or to actually get a coach or to get somebody that understands the game, some of the, and to teach you some of the finer things that for some reason, unless your brain really understands what you're supposed to be doing, and how that process works, it's not going to figure it out on its own just from trial and error sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. But you were saying like how you're not going to get that passion unless you get your ass kicked or learn. We're in the new generation with YouTube and stuff where you could do so much homework and learn so much from watching streaming of matches of the top level pros. That didn't exist.
No.
40 years ago. 40 years ago, you had to go on the road. You had to play better people. You had to hope. They're not going to help you. Because if they help you, that's not going to help them.
Yeah.
The tournament I played on Sunday, I try to tell people, these guys are open books, man. They'll tell you anything. It's a whole different world now. No one's keeping secrets. No one's, if you show up and you show you want to be there and you're there every week and you're trying, they're going to help you. They'll give you pointers, but again, that goes back to what I said earlier, is learning how to learn and learning how to turn off. And I can't tell you how many people, I'll say, okay, this is the way you should have done that. Like, well, I do it this way. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep doing it that way, even though it doesn't work for you. Keep trying,
The big muscle guy at the gym that's doing an exercise wrong, but he's been doing it like that for 10 years. You can't go tell him nothing. But if you see some older lady that you could tell has not been in the gym, and you could just be like, so I usually try to preface like, I have a little experience in that. If you're interested in a suggestion, I don't want to just go and impose my will on other people. But that usually is a lot more receptive. But our ego is interesting too, because another fun story was like, I got into magic many years ago, and I just thought it'd be so cool. It's so entertaining. It brings joy to people. It's like all these sorts of things. And so I go to this magic store that just recently closed after COVID, unfortunately, Midwest Magic in Franklin Park. But it's this huge place, and they got all these decorations and skulls and all this cool stuff and counter after counter of different magic tricks and displays. And I'm just like kind of walking around, and I saw this video on coin magic. So I thought, oh, that'd be cool. I'll do some coin magic. So the video mentioned a half-ounce silver coin, right? Or a 1 ounce silver coin, which is basically just a $50 or $1. So after seeing that video, I think if I walk in with the lingo and I kind of know the terms, then I'm going to be accepted into the clique a little bit more, and wrong thinking in a sense, because they know, and so I kind of came in, I was like, yeah, do you have any half-ounce silver coins? And he's like, you want coins, kid, go to a coin shop. This is a magic shop. Yeah. And he just kind of like shot me down. Like, total like tail between the legs, walk of shame as I'm starting to browse the cabinets as I'm headed for the door. And then he was cool enough to come up and say, come here. What are you looking for? Yeah. If you want to get some old coins to work out with, then obviously go to a magic shop or go to a coin shop and get the most beat up silver coins they have. And, and then he was showing me some tricks. And so that taught me a lesson, just like you were saying. Well, how do you learn how to learn? And so if you don't know something, to walk into a place and say, hey, man, I'm new. I don't know nothing. Like, where should I start?
Yeah.
Come with me, son. We'll show you the way. And that's so much cooler.
But, something to take that even further is just learn to extend that to all parts of your life. Like, if anybody is going to impart any wisdom on you on anything, listen, and it might not pertain to something at that moment in your life, but you never know. Maybe later down the line, you'll be like, wow, that's what they were talking about. You know what I mean? So I love it. I mean, I meet people all the time from all walks of life, all ages, all everything. And always want to listen, always want to hear, and always want to take something away from it,
Yeah, I had a friend that he's like, you can't learn anything by talking. Yeah, so sometimes listening and just learning, absorbing. And, one other aspect of that learning thing, it's funny too, because sometimes you'll notice, like I had a friend that was into dogs, was trying to get into dog training because he wanted to have a well-trained dog. He didn't want to be one of those people with dogs that are not disciplined or whatnot. So we went to a place and they had free classes on Saturdays or suggested $10 donation or whatever it was. And you'd get all these people that are, again, they just want to help. They just want to have you have a controlled dog and understand. But then you start excelling, then you could see that they'll be a little more standoffish because like, wow, he's actually getting good because you're putting the work in or you're working with the dog or you're practicing it, on the table. And then if you notice that people might start pulling back a little bit because now you're going to beat them or whatnot. But, at the end of the day, it is kind of amazing that if we just give value, if you had the attitude that I'll help you as much as I can and I'll show you every trick because I'm still going to work harder and I'm still going to beat you, and I'm not going to I'm not going to feel good about myself by beating you after holding back. Like, I'll give you anything. I'm still going to beat you. That's so much of a better way to look at it and just try to help people, get better. But I did, sometimes you will notice that people stand off or back off a little bit, but that should just be a compliment to you that you're growing, because they're scaring you. You're scaring them a little bit or whatnot.
But there's like literally an infinite amount of people and an infinite amount of way that certain people get along. And so you might not meet that person you get along with initially or the next person, but you will. You'll meet those people that, are your people that you can communicate with and vibe with. You know what I mean? Not everybody can walk in their, pool room on a Sunday and play that tournament every week and everyone's going to want to hang out and be nice to. But then, there will be those people that come in and they just vibe real well. But I love... it's funny because my pool world and my art tattoo world are so separate. And pool makes, I think, the weirdest friendships and the weirdest connections. I can't explain it. I mean, I've seen people become friends through a pool that would never in a million years play pool, get along. I was invited to play in a money league. It's on the south side through a friend that was on this team that needed help. And I live on the south side, so I did. And it's in some very different neighborhoods, let's say. And it's fine. I'm the only guy that looks like me there. I've never had anyone give me drama. I brought a friend of mine in who is a woman who's Chinese. And she is about as out of place in some of these places as you could imagine. But it works, Whereas if, she was just there to get a drink, that would be like, what the hell is she doing here?
Yeah, what are you doing here?
But...
if you could back it up with some skills, then you're speaking the language through a mutual enjoyment of an art. So, like, basically, if somebody came in off the street and witnessed the groups of people that are engaging in this, they'd be like, what the hell is going on? And, 63rd and Kedzie on a Tuesday night at 11 at night, how is this happening? But we don't think of it that way. We're all just getting along playing pool. Right. So it definitely makes... some really... But amazing. Obviously somebody coming in there and just being an asshole and starting a bunch of trouble is not going to end well for them. if they, remarkably, I've never had that happen. Yeah. But even if you walk into Chris's on a Sunday night to that 9-ball tournament, the variety of people that are there is always... Yeah, it's diversity. It's diversity. That's the diversity everybody's looking for. But, it's achieved through this mutual kind of passion to get to a certain place. We all want to be great at pool. We all want to, play harder and be smarter and work harder. And that unites all of us. The common interests. We all get along and wanting to kill each other. Yeah. We're all there to kill each other, and that's what brings us together. Interesting. When I was a little younger, I got into road racing a little bit. And so when I was in the Navy, I ended up buying this race bike, and out in Summit Point, West Virginia, there's some road racing going on there. Then when I got back in the state or in Chicago, you start looking into it, and there's like 6 tracks within 3 or 4 hours around here. And there's this Great Lakes Road Racing Association back then to where you can actually participate in a series that only runs 6 races a year. So you didn't have to be out there every weekend if you couldn't afford it, but you could still get some points and stuff. And I never got that good, but you might be the fast guy in the neighborhood, and you go out on a track and you think you're going through this corner fast with your knee on the ground, and then 5 bikes go by you like you're stopped. Mm-hmm. So you want to talk another situation of ego deflation. And the guys that are fastest aren't the craziest. They got the experience. They got their suspension dialed in. They got more laps under their belt, you know? And so to me, being a crazy guy, teenager riding on the street in Chicago, it is amazing I'm alive for some of the stupid things that I did. But with mom telling you to wear a helmet and, you know, all these different things, nothing worked more than getting out there with some professionals and learning the capabilities of the bike. Then in an emergency situation, you understood what the bike can do and can't do. So, you know, so I think it was the safest thing for me was to learn to get comfortable with protective equipment on. So you're wearing a helmet, you're wearing some gloves, you know, you're not, and then you realize yourself the dangers on the street with antifreeze and oil and all these different sand and different things that you might not experience on the track. And if you have a place to vent that and go as fast as you think you could go safely, as safe as possible anyway, it tended to really just sink in my head that I don't have to be that crazy guy in the street. So I would usually, the fastest guy in the group was usually the guy tailing in the back, because you know, and then I had aftermarket brakes and stuff. So if somebody tries to chase me into a corner and I grab a handful of brake, their brakes ain't going to work like mine. And then they end up just rear-ending me or something. Like, I don't need any of that either. So a lot of times you just hang in the back, just knowing that I'm faster than you guys, you know. But in the same token, you still find that camaraderie like you're talking about from mutual interest. Like one time I went to a Weir race, and they encouraged like amateurs to disconnect their back brake because they're pretty dangerous if you don't know how to use them on a track. And then so I had a broken line on the rear caliper, but they wouldn't let me pass inspection because they're like, if you go off in the dirt, you need the back brake to stop, you know. So one of the guys lived in the area. He ran home back to the shop, and the next morning there was a brake line sitting on the seat of my bike. Like, oh, don't worry about it, I got you. Like $12 part or $50 at the time or whatever, but just that same kind of thing. And then you'd see these guys rubbing elbows in these corners, bumping into each other as they're racing through these corners. Like, that guy's going to kick the snot out of that guy when he gets off the track. And they get off the track, and the four of them are the best buddies out there, you know. But when they're on that track, man, they're competing hard.
Yeah. But the whole, whether it's pool or motorcycles or whatever, it's all about getting out of your comfort zone and, you know, getting into the world.
Yeah.
Whatever your passion is. And, you know, I think now more than ever, the danger of, you know, with online gaming and stuff, of people just like sit at home, you know. You see a lot of businesses that used to be more like bars and stuff that are suffering because now people don't really leave the house.
Yeah.
You know, and they're doing something, you know, they're interacting with people online or AI or where the hell they're interacting with. But I think it's losing that, you know, and that's why I try to encourage my kids, you know, into doing these things that they have to get out of the house and go interact with people.
For sure. And that was another thing too that I found, like this word altruistic, like where there's people willing to help you and they really don't want anything in return. You know what I mean? They just want to help, and they're good people. So like you could hang around a bad lot for a lot of years and just assume that the whole world's like that. But then once in a while you break out of that comfort zone, even though it's chaotic, but that's what you're comfortable with. And if you explore other areas that don't seem normal to you, it's amazing that there's a lot of good people out there. Like one of the things was there's a Right Camera Club that's kind of a local camera club in the area, and great people. You just go with my wife was into photography, and she was going with her SLR camera and trying to figure out how to use it. Mm-hmm. And one of the members was the Photoshop professor at Triton College here locally. So he would do a presentation on how he adjusts his photos for competitions, and he's not holding back nothing. He's showing you these secrets, and you're looking at this program like, this is absolute magic. This is unbelievable. And you have this resource. These resources are all available. And like you said, now that you could sit and just watch a YouTube video on just about any topic is just changing the world for some for the good, some for the bad. That's the normal break of all of society, that even with our kids or situations, or you hear stories like Michael Jordan or somebody tearing somebody down, telling them you'll never be good at this sport, and you would never tell somebody to do that to a child, and yet somehow that was the motivation, that fire that got pissed off or whatever it is that got that fire burning in them to work harder. And
well, that's a piece of the puzzle they like talking about. There's probably plenty of other pieces you don't hear about.
Yeah, for sure. But setting goals, the only people that achieve goals are the ones that make them, I guess. But yeah, so your life. So we started off at starting off. You did shoot me some pictures. If you wanted to kind of take a look at some stuff, obviously I know you can't say what your favorite piece is per se, because everybody's...
No, but I love challenges. I do a lot of cover-up work. There's a few I sent you where, people have something they don't like anymore, and that you're able to transform that into something better, Well, I do a lot of work with cover-ups.
That's the only thing I have is that was super old.
Yeah.
But there was a Indian ink needle and thread homemade jobber for Derek Riggs' signature on the Iron Maiden albums, the Circle and the...
That's awesome.
A bunch of us got that done when we were crazy at whatever age.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked the way that it was a faded look and it wasn't real prominent colors, because I didn't necessarily want something standing out when you're covering up something. And it was like, I didn't want laser removal or whatever, but...
Well, that's the thing with a good cover-up. Basically, the old one and the new one are going to coexist in the same space. So it's important that you have to learn how to integrate the old design into the new design in such a way that it makes sense, that you wouldn't see it if it wasn't pointed out, and yet it blends seamlessly so that it doesn't look like a cover-up.
Right.
And that's like a puzzle. I love the puzzles. I love the hard work. And so I will sit there and look and look and look and try to see it.
Yeah.
And I'll make a couple stabs at it and I'll be like, nope. And I'll keep trying and then I'll see it. I'll get it.
Nice.
And you just gotta be patient. You gotta know when it's right.
Oh, okay. So like here's a few examples if you wanted to point one out.
So bottom right.
Bottom right.
Yeah. You can see there halfway of what he had and what I did with it. And there's a full view of the completed tattoo that I sent you, the whole back. But there you can see that half and half. Yeah, so bottom left, that's the finished one. And to the right of it, go right one. And you can see the dimensions. And, so what I had to do there was, it appears that the old one was black, but once black settles in, it becomes more of a dark gray almost. So now when you introduce a new black, the new darkest dark, you can kind of use the old one. You can click the old one, and you can kind of see the way it's had on the right there. You could see what I mean about how now you're turning that black that pre-existed before into a gray and introducing new black on top of that gray. So that way you could turn it more into a dimensional design. So that was a really successful cover-up, being able to take something that nobody else thought they could cover and turn it into something. Like looking at the shapes of the skin that's available between the black areas and kind of envisioning what can go in that space and what would make sense, creating dimension.
Yeah,
I love it.
Cool.
Yeah. There's another one. Yeah, there's that rose. Same thing. What I mean? Of taking that black and kind of looking at that tattoo on the right and saying, okay, what I'm going to do with these shapes, what makes sense in these open skin areas. You know what I mean? So you're not just putting white over black. You're using the black in the shadows in the new design, so it makes sense to be where it is.
Yeah, and even looking at the magic of oil painting or something where sometimes they're doing this base, which is part of what that is. It's just the base, the canvas,
you kind
and
of
then
splotch in your tones.
But obviously, with tattooing, your highlights can't be on top of the base.
Cannot,
right.
So you have to use every little nook and cranny.
With oil, you can take white and go over black, and it's fine. But you can't do that with skin. So obviously, that's...
Yeah, if you do that with skin, you have to do multiple layers to make it successful. But I don't like to do. I'd rather take the time and kind of try to stare at those spaces, like I said, and think, okay, what is this shape gonna be? What am I gonna do with this shape? And then integrate that in the new design.
Very cool.
Yeah. Don't know if I sent you cover-ups. The one.
Let me.
Yeah, there's one cover-up there.
Let me back up one only because I think. Okay, those are. I didn't know if they went into this file. No. Okay.
Yeah. So the rest are other designs and tattoos people I've worked on.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of random stuff. Colors.
Anybody that I've known that have mentioned, I mean, your name is I don't know how, I'm not in that industry, so I don't know like ranking wise, but most people that I know that have good work definitely know you, of course.
That's changing so much now. There's so many new people tattooing now that, it's always like I hear names now. I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. And they'll be booked for a year and they're $500 an hour.
And they're on Inked or whatever at some
not
of your
even,
shows.
No, those be an Instagram thing.
Wow.
With Instagram and TikTok and all that now, people become what's called Insta famous, where they just like, okay, you didn't exist a year ago and now you're hot shit. Okay.
Yeah, right. Which is fun. I mean, any way to get exposure or whatever.
No, I'm not bagging on them. I'm just saying that's, where we're at now.
Yeah.
Every time there's a new form of media, tattoo is growing exponentially. So like when I started, it was the tattoo magazines. And the tattoo magazines and the exposure brought to tattooing brought in a whole new generation of tattoo artists that are like my age and come from an artistic background. Like all of us basically were artists and we saw what was being done back then and we're like, I could do better than that, or I think I could do better than that. And that's what inspired a lot of us to, go for it. Then you had the TV shows. When the TV shows came out, that blew tattooing up. That exposed it to a whole new crowd, made it more socially acceptable. And then you had a whole new generation of tattoo artists that came into that crowd. Then you had Instagram. Again, another leap where you had more people being exposed to things. And every time there's TikTok, every time there's a new one, it's exposing it, bringing more people into the fold. So tattooing grows exponentially every time there's one of these, Yeah. I don't know how much more it can grow because right now it's pretty massive.
Well, and it's the same thing. I mean, as long as it's the same with music and everything else, those same thing like not to close the loop on politics even, is that there was those gatekeepers. And even in any kind of industry.
Still are in politics.
Well, yeah, no,
100%.
And I'm saying like even in some of these industries, there was a certain clique that you would need to be in, and if you didn't go through that specific those channels, you might not ever be recognized or get the goofy award or know which award is kind of important or for recognition or something like that. But most artists, I mean, I think they're just looking to do their art and not too concerned over that. But
well, I mean, it depends if that's the way you make your living or if it's doing art for art's sake,
Yeah.
And a lot of times there's parameters, I mean, there's things that are keys to success you have to follow in order to get from A to B. And, when you bring in new forms of media, new ways to circumvent that and get to where you want to go and people figure it out, they're all over it, and then the old parameters are useless, a lot of that, like look at streaming versus renting DVDs. That just destroyed a whole industry,
Well, we were talking a little bit about AI, and that's pretty similar too. And I think that
it's going to destroy so many industries.
It's going to change a lot, but it's almost like the fear tactic kind of thing, where robotics and an assembly line, and it's going to kill all these manufacturing jobs. And
it did. I mean,
it sure did. But
so I was
the world
listening
went
to
on.
something about industrialization back then, and all the people that were, speaking out against industrialization and what was going to result of it. What the hell's the name of this artist? It's driving me nuts, but he was a big, like, this is not the right path for humanity to go down, and some would say he's right, and with the AI thing, that's going to put so many people out of work. Last year, we were at a wedding in Denver, and we were in a car full of people that was being transported from A to B. And this guy was talking, I think, to his grandmother, and he worked at a law firm of some sort. And he was explaining to her about, ChatGPT and all that stuff and how they use it. And he's like, yeah, I used to have to work so hard on making all these legal forms for these, things I'd have to do. And now I go in ChatGPT and I tell it what to make and it makes it. And I give it some more suggestions and it makes it. And I do in under an hour what would take me weeks to do before. And I give it to my boss. And he's like, this looks great. And, it's so much easier now. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh, buddy.
Yeah.
How long do you think it's till your boss realizes this and you're no longer working and now he's just doing it all through ChatGPT?
Yeah.
And there's going to be so many people who are going to be just not necessary.
Hopefully, what's supposed to happen will. And I think there's still going to be an avenue for people to be the mediators of how that works in some ways. So we did kind of go through a pretty big phase in this country about where everybody it was fine that all that manufacturing was going overseas because you don't want your kid working on some assembly line, and everybody wanted to be a consultant and everybody wanted to make $200,000 a year sitting in a desk and not, not doing manual labor or whatever, or picking crops or whatever the case may be. But obviously those jobs have to get done, and maybe robots can fill some of those jobs that people don't really do. Maybe that would open up some other avenues, or maybe there needs to be some sort of basic social income if unemployment really becomes a massive problem, and maybe that would inspire people to follow some of their creative dreams instead of just getting stuck.
The problem though with I see with a lot of it is they feel a need to. They're not going a whole hog on it yet, where they still keep people around. Case in point, when you go to a store now and they have all the automatic scanners, and they have the person who's kind of just there to be there as a human being to talk to, they're not doing anything. They're standing there waiting for you to be dumb at what you're doing so they can tell you what to do. But you used to have 6 cashiers. Right. Now you have one person standing there who's being kept around. I even saw one where there's a hotel in Florida and there's basically an iPad there to check you in, and it's somebody in India.
And then it just dispenses your car. It dispenses your card, programs your card, tells you what room to go to.
But it's some guy in a foreign country who's checking you in on an iPad.
Well,
so, it's down to the individual businesses, how they want to operate, and if people want to support that.
Yeah.
So, like, if I have a choice to go to a hotel that's cheaper, but I have to deal with an iPad and some guy in India to tell me what I need, or how to get what I want, or go to the hotel, I pay a little more and deal with actual humans,
Yeah.
So it's going to come down to people and what they want to do with their
there's
business.
This book, Cheap.
Yeah.
The High Cost of Discount Culture is actually a pretty good read. Mm-hmm. Ellen Ruppelshell. And it opened my eyes a little bit because, like you kind of mentioned earlier in some ways about wearing different hats, right? So like we might have our citizen hat, and then we might have our union hat, our worker hat, and then we might have our investor hat, and you might have your businessman hat, and then you might have your artist hat. And all those different hats usually change some of our perspectives on how we would address a problem or try to work out a solution or whatever the case may be, And so back in the day, when Walmart would have some not so nice business practices in small towns and move outside the border, they had this business. Allegedly they had a business model where they would move right outside of town and then promise the world and then kind of renege on some of those deals because they weren't in that town or whatnot. And you could be like, screw Walmart, I'm not shopping at Walmart, and I'm a union guy, and screw them, and play that game. But the reality is like you're really not affecting much of that problem. And sometimes,
well, you know what, as owner of a business, you are. I mean, if you made the choice to buy that hammer at the local Ace Hardware over the Home Depot, believe me, you're making it a big help to that person
for the local business.
Yes, yeah. And I can't think like that. I can't think like I'm not making a choice, because
my point was that me not shopping at Walmart is not making a big significant issue. And then a lot of times if I was to really look at myself and put my investor hat on, am I invested in mutual funds or is my pension invested in funds that profit from Walmart's profits? well, now we're stuck in this conundrum here. Which do you prefer? You know? And so, like, I did a lot of saltwater aquarium stuff with fish tanks. And
I should keep a list when I talk to you of all the things you've done, because it would be like...
Well, it's partially because, like, you know,
fishing, motorcycle.
In the beginning, in the beginning, I think it's part of whether people want to say, oh, you know, attention deficit or whatever in school, and you're kind of...
Well, I think it's more of a personality type. I think there's some people that are just like that. I've known people my whole life like this.
Well, I used to joke about it.
Yeah, but they're not. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just there's a certain type of personality where it's like, yeah, I want to do this. Okay, now I want to do that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
So jack of all trades, master of none, as it comes down to it. You know what I mean? I could be a decent pool player. I could be a decent this, you know, and then I just never really found that passion to really dedicate so hard to something that I really became great or excelled at something.
You got 3 of them here.
Well, there's quite a bit, you know.
No, I'd say you have 3 kids up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's your passion.
Yeah, that's obviously that works, and you know, I did bowling for a while. You know, I would jump from thing to thing. You know, buy new shoes, buy a couple of balls, and then that would be my thing for a year, and then you kind of filter off onto something else. But I think part of that is exploring yourself and finding the things you like or whatever, and until you really kind of feel a calling or whatever. And even this podcast, for instance, is, I mean, the main premise it's never about making money or anything like that, and probably it'd be years before I do, I'm sure, anyway, or whatnot. But just being authentic and connecting with individuals and human beings and having conversations with people, because none of us can sit down and just put the phone to the side and just have a conversation. It's so difficult to do these days.
See, that's the thing with tattooing is people see you almost like a therapist sometimes, where they just tell you everything.
You got a lot of time.
We all talk, you know, or when we're eating lunch and stuff, what our customers are up to, and I hear some stories that are just crazy. You know, we all do, and
yeah, I can imagine. Well, I think, you know, people are missing that connection, right? And so whether it's not so easy at the dentist office when you got stuff hanging out of your mouth or whatever, but it's funny that people are striving for any opportunity to kind of have that connection because they're not getting it anywhere else, you know. And
I also think it's kind of a relief that you're not part of their normal life, so they can speak more candidly with you than they can with people in their life.
For sure.
And so that's pretty, you know, doors open, let's hear it, you know.
Yeah.
But there's some people that tattoo, they wear earbuds, they don't even pay attention, you know, and I hate that. I mean, I get it. Some people want to like ultra hyper focus on what they're doing, but I also think it's like kind of part of the experience. You
know? Oh, as the artist, you're saying, not as the client.
Well, both nowadays, but client, that's fine, you know, but when the artist does it, I'm
just trying to not focus on the pain.
But when the artist does it, I think they're kind of, you know, screwing up the process a bit, but you know, if it works for them, well, that's their thing.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
I would never do that.
Yeah,
I hate it.
It seems like the connection is part of the process for sure.
And but not even that, like, you know, this person might have concerns or whatever, they're already intimidated and afraid to voice, you know, so if you're doing this, they're never going to voice them, you know? Yeah.
No, that's, and the last thing you want is for them to not say something if it's not coming out exactly how they want it or something.
Or any concern.
Or anything,
And when you do fix up or cover up tattoos, a lot of times they'll say, you know, yeah, I was wondering or I was thinking, I didn't say this. And you're like, why would you say something? You know, this is your tattoo for life. So I always try to stress that with people, you know, like, listen, if you want to move it, let's move it. You want to do this?
Yeah, we'll make 27 edits. I don't care.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get you where you want to be, you know, and hopefully people will take heed of that. Sometimes people don't even know what they want, though, you know, so it's hard. You know, you try to give them what they want, and they don't even know what they want.
Yeah.
So you got to learn how to maneuver there.
But and then you're the expert in a sense that, you know, you can have your opinions, but you also can kind of feel out where people are at and what you know is going to look cool at the end of the day that they'll be happy with in a lot of ways. So it's almost like a tradesman or an electrician or somebody comes over and it's like, I don't need to give you every detail. You're supposed to be a professional. You know there should be a 3-way switch into this room and can lights over here. Tell me how would you do it if it was your house?
Yeah,
you know?
It's a give and take. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's definitely important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that even with the AI, there's always going to be a desire for people to have this real experience too. So,
well, they have AI chatbots for that.
well, suppose that, yeah, if they don't tell you how to make a noose or whatever, that there's some crazy stories out there.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But some of that's part of that fear base. It's the same when
Well, it's already happening. I mean, they're already being enabled,
Yeah. No, and yeah, who knows where that's going to lead, but I think there's going to be good and there's going to be bad, just like any other situation in history that, we can't freak out until there's really something to freak out about because.
Well, it's kind of useless to freak out.
Yeah.
It's more, I think it's better to just get a good context of what's going on and keep it in, the right context.
Even if an artist is somewhat using AI to help write song lyrics or something, or I don't know, but there's something about an acoustic setting in a bar and a passion of somebody that's performing, and when you can hear that authenticity, and as opposed to like some pop song that the algorithms just told you what chord changes work and what people like, or there was some movie way back when where there was like a rap guy that had some software he wrote that analyzed music and took the best parts of all the most popular songs and helped him to write songs, and he was writing hits or whatever. And it was just one of those kind of moral dilemmas, like, okay, is that how we're supposed to create art or whatever? But I think you can see through it for some reason, because there's a magic that happens with even live art, whether it's a tattoo or a drawing or a painting, or a song being performed that just touches you in a different place. That AI.
Did you see this? It was on CBS News. It was a guy, Rick Beato. He did a thing about this program where they could basically say, "Create me a singer-songwriter." I'll send you the video later. It's pretty crazy. So it actually makes the picture of the girl and gives her a name, and then he says, "Make a song about walking away because this guy doesn't appreciate you." And it writes the lyrics and makes this song out of thin air. And she sounds great.
In 20 seconds, yeah.
Oh, but she sounds like a human. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it was literally created in 20 seconds. And my instant reaction was, I want that program. I want to say, like, make me the Black Sabbath album between, like, Paranoid Volume 4. Like, make me whatever, make me the last Typo Negative album that ever came out. You know what I mean? And see what it came up with. Because what it did with this was crazy. And you talk about like that human quality and stuff, and it knows what to do. Like if you listen to this, it does not sound,
and it's getting better by the day.
Oh, absolutely. And so, but what I think is going to happen is you're going to have these songs and this stuff kind of integrated into radio stations with real stuff or on soundtracks, let's say, to a point where you're not going to discern between what the human one was and what was the AI one. I mean, you think about the AI one. What did it cost to make them that?
Yeah.
Nothing. It happened in seconds. You don't have to pay a producer. You don't have to pay an artist. You don't have to pay royalties. You just literally create this out of thin air in seconds. They could do this all day.
Well,
and you could tweak them. You could say, well, why don't we do this to this?
Yeah.
This to that. And, add that little touch into it.
Have you played with the Grok one for off of X?
No.
So it's getting pretty crazy. It's getting pretty wild because it is doing images and stuff. Like, let's see, maybe I could pull up just an example. So it's funny because it's like, again, either you roll with the times or you die, right? And so sometimes new technology comes out, and is the business going to use the Square card reader or have more options to pay or all these things, which provides a service for a customer at a fee, or whatever the case may be, or so sometimes you just have to learn how to evolve in this new marketplace, right? And so even back in the day, like to get a marketer, you could look at the Cracker Barrel logo and say somebody got paid to make that cheap logo, even though the old logo is pretty cool, or whatever the new drama is that they're putting out there. But you could pay a lot of money for some marketer to make just a logo for you. So even the Flipside Frolic logo, that I did a sketch drawing and sent it to a guy on Fiverr, on Fiverr. If you ever, Fiverr's like, it started off as it was a website where you can do almost any little things for $5, you know, and now it's not $5 anymore, but $50 or something to do a logo and then own the credits that they draw graphic design, draw a logo for you or whatever. You can make a few tweaks and say, no, can you change the color? Can you do this? As opposed to what might have been $250 or something, whatever, for a marketer to do it for you or whatnot. But let me see if I could.
The grok thing.
Well, I used the grok.
So I've never messed with it.
I just don't. I don't. Oh, I have to. Oh, let me close that because
there's actually. I think the last South Park was all about the ChatGPT thing.
Oh, really?
Funny. Yeah.
Well, they're genius. I can't. You know how many years that show's been going?
Oh yeah, I remember when the first one started. Yeah.
God, and it's like some comedians talk about it too, like where there's something about being a cartoon that lets you push the envelope and get away with a little bit more than maybe you would get away with. If you were just not a cartoon.
Well, like we spoke earlier about the comic artists, have the numbers and show that they're, worthy of it. You can't just come out with some crazy cartoon that does whatever it wants. You have to earn it. And I think, their initial success opened the door to more success, If it wasn't getting the ratings or anything, they wouldn't be around. But because it gets the ratings, people love it. It's allowed to.
Yeah, so this logo was done and paid for through Fiverr, and so you could copyright it or whatever. And I knew I wanted a yin yang. I knew that I wanted red, white, and blue. I didn't want it to look too patriotic, but I didn't want it to. And so the first thing that they did was just like some swipe copied thing off the internet. So somebody's like, oh, that kind of looks like the Fendi logo, because I wanted the F and the F and the flip side frolic. And then then I was like, no, I kind of sent a sketch and I was like, something like this. And then, so it was completely designed by me through an artist that followed my instruction, and I think turned out pretty well. But then I took that image and I downloaded it into Grok and said, use this image as a logo base. But I was considering doing another podcast where instead of more of the interview process, it was more me just ranting about whatever's going on in the world and just do it so I was like, how am I going to incorporate my rants if I wanted to do that? We'll see how people like that or whatever. So then I was doing a toy on words for that, and I came up with flip side flip outs or whatever. So that'll be funny. That'll be me flipping out by myself. And then
well, that could be a side thing. Those would be little 5-minute videos or 3-minute ones.
Or I was thinking, like, if I did like a Friday night one, I could do a live stream, and then I could play with having a live stream and interacting with the people in the chat or whatever you could do. Then maybe I would pull in a Zoom interview with somebody that I can't afford to fly out, or if I really want to try to interview somebody that's in perfect.
That's good.
Yeah, somebody in what's it called, out of state or whatnot.
Yeah.
Cool. So I don't know if I could pull it up. I could pull it up on my phone just to show, but so I ended up downloading that logo, and then it really gave me, within 10 seconds, gave me 100 options.
Really? Yeah.
I mean, and so.
Oh wow, you're not kidding. Jeez.
So I don't know if that would even show up. But
yeah, you'd see it.
So then I picked one, and you could pick one and say, okay, can you change it? AI did screw up that, like, there was an extra letter in the word for some reason, or something like that. But that's probably the one I'm going to use.
I have people send in art that's AI, and one guy sent in a Jesus that had 6 fingers. Another lady sent in a fairy that had 3 arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you gotta be very conscientious of this. And people I know said they've seen tattoos where they've made the design on AI, do the tattoo, and then people comment on it, and they're like, dude, why does this guy have 2 left arms? You know, like, and the artists, that's what I'm saying, they're not really artists. They're just copying.
Yeah.
And they'll go ahead and tattoo it that way on somebody.
Yeah.
And now the whole internet sees it. You know? So that's what's coming around the bend right now.
Yeah, that's criminal.
But that's happening.
100%. And that was like the main thing, like the hand thing and all of that. So, but again, 6 months from now,
they'll have it worked out.
It's even crazier.
But you know, like AI art, like H.R. Geiger, I'm a big fan of. I got to meet him, hang out, which is pretty amazing. But you try to see like ChatGPT or whatever do imitations of H.R. Geiger, not even close. It can't even come in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Like I could, you know, easily pick it up. It's not it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's trying. And there's some things it could replicate, but there's some things it just cannot touch.
I think the main problem is trying to find some way to digitally tag your individual work. Because
I tell you this one. So I have a friend, he's an artist. He's done the cover of Time magazine, like the Man of the Year issue multiple times. He does Rolling Stone magazine. He does all kind of art. He's fantastic. Great guy. He does everything from total realism to mostly caricature work. And he was contacted by a person who's just like some random person that was like, hey, I just want to let you know that I uploaded some photos of myself to ChatGPT and said, make a caricature of me. It did, and it signed his name to it.
Wow.
This guy never brought up my friend, ever. Just said, make a caricature of me.
Because it's just stripping it off the internet, and if that signature happened to be in one of the pictures, it just incorporated it.
Well, it saw that he's a popular caricature artist. There's hundreds of them, thousands of them. But it took his signature and put it on the art.
That's not good.
No, it's what the guy makes his living doing.
Yeah.
And now the internet's stealing, AI is stealing his name.
That's where, like, even if you were to use ChatGPT or search engines or language models to write your paper for you, which obviously is happening with so many people.
Yeah.
Even some of these doctorates that things are coming out with plagiarism and all kinds of stuff. But if there was like, if it was some way to digital tag, and I'm not a software guy, but if you created original content and you uploaded it and claimed it as your original content, if it could at least tag it to where even if ChatGPT stripped the internet and pulled a section of it, if it can just automatically pull a bibliography where they would at least give credit to the contributors to that, or to the 5 pieces of art that were some sort of were a model for the creation of this this AI image, then maybe there could be some form of giving back credit or some sort of monetary compensation.
Yeah, but the problem there is there's no choice. Like, you don't have the choice to opt out. You know, to say, I don't want this thing using my stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, you'd have to have some sort of...
But you don't.
Yeah. No,
you didn't have any choice.
Right.
And, you know, I know this guy who does the I-Team on ABC News, Jason Knowles, and I put him in touch with him. And they did a segment about it, and this lawyer just basically said, you're screwed. You know what I mean? Like, good luck. You know, he didn't come on and say, yeah, it stole your likeness and your name, and that's terrible. Let's sue him. He said, no, in this day and age, man, welcome to the game. You know, deal with it, which is like the worst answer you can get. You know, you expect it to be like, that's not right. But no, his answer was, that's the game, dude.
It's funny that, I mean,
whether you want to play it or not, you're involved.
We talked a little beforehand setting up about my accident that some of the listeners have heard about, but that was the same kind of scenario. If I really wanted to pursue doing the next right thing with all aspects of that case, I would have needed a team of lawyers with 6 or 8 lawyers for sure. And how many of them would work pro bono? Or are you going to take $15,000 and retain this attorney or whatever the case may be? So of course, nobody can afford to pursue these matters sometimes on these little things. But there was a few times that I said, but it's not right. And they're like, welcome to Chicago.
Well, welcome to the universe, but Chicago special.
Yeah. So it was like, you know, and then sometimes like some of those issues can turn into like a whole life mission if you let it. Like, I'm going to call the Consumer Protection Agency, and now you're going to dedicate hours of just filing a complaint to just try to get it on record, so maybe they can't do this to somebody else or whatever. And unfortunately, the outcomes are never all that successful.
But I think that's like where the function of an honest media, comes into play, where that should be their prerogative, is to help champion people that are wronged or doing things like this, and that's no longer there. When they have, the city, those, the powers that be will say to them, okay, you want to do that story, it's fine, but we're going to cut you off from this, and that, and they don't want to get cut off from this, and that, then they're not going to stick their neck out for you.
Yeah.
And so when they won't do it, the crooked system won't do it, it's terrible. And I see these cases and read these stories all the time. Yeah. And I know people, who have been wronged like you can't even believe. And, they can't get any justice.
No, that's that. And even with the networks and everything else, it's just, that's one of those things where when you talk about the tribalism, you really do notice how are people really that blind that they can't see some of this obvious
like
craziness?
I said, the pre-established, manipulation of people, where they implant, this generational idea of these are the right people to back, or these are the right people that are looking out for you. And you'll see example after example of this is not happening, and yet they won't move from their stance.
And when they can't even see. Like, I understand that sometimes people are just there to read a script, but and they're supposed to be given objective news. And if they're blatantly lying to you
every day,
and it's like, how many times do you have to be lied to your face before you don't trust that person anymore?
But, the other thing that happens, though, is they have both sides of the coin. They run it all. That guy that made that documentary about A Century of the Self, about the manipulation and the rise of Freud and his nephew Bernays, he also made another documentary about the parallel rise of it was Trump, Putin, and the guy that ran Syria, Assad. Assad's dad used to run Syria, and then he died, and his brother was supposed to take over. But something happened to his brother, and then he got power. But not a lot of people talk about how Assad's dad kicked Reagan's ass. Like, they destroyed America. America tried to get involved over there in the 80s, and they got destroyed. All these countries, Iran, Iraq, Libya, they all united, and they rebelled, whatever, America. But in this one documentary, there's a lot of news footage from back in the day of when that was all happening. We don't talk about that stuff anymore because it's not good. But at the same time, that's when Putin came around and started rising. And one of the things that he did was backed all of his opposition through channels, so they didn't know he was backing them. And that's what happens a lot now is, case in point, the last time there was a governor race here where Pritzker was running against, what was his name?
Rauner? Was it?
No, it wasn't Rauner. It was the guy, the farmer from...
Oh, Oberweis.
No. It was a guy from Southern Illinois. But who is this guy's number one backer? J.B. Pritzker. Because what they do is, and this is what they do, they will, let's say you have a field of Republicans, they will think this guy's going to be the easiest to beat, and they will back him against his opponent so he wins that nomination.
Yeah.
And then, this guy gets on TV and he's a clown and gets walked all over. He sucks, And that's actually what happened with Trump in 2016, is Hillary and them felt that he would be the easiest to beat. So you can read about this, how they had Colbert, they had all these news channels, Saturday Night Live. This is hilarious. I was showing this to my daughter the other day. You could try to look up that episode of Saturday Night Live and you cannot find it.
Scrubbed.
But if you keep looking, you'll find it.
Yeah.
And if you see the skits on that episode, you will just be like, am I watching The Twilight Zone?
Yeah.
Like, people that will go on TV every day and just bag on him and hate him were kissing his butt.
Yeah.
You watch the Colbert episode he was on, kissing his butt.
Are you talking before he even announced his
No, after. Because they wanted him to be the Republican candidate because they thought he'd be the easiest to beat.
Correct. Yep.
And it's called the Pied Piper strategy. And you could read about this.
Yep.
And they all went all in on making sure he would win that nomination because they figured it was a landslide. They'd crush him.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, but that's what they do. And so a lot of times, like you're saying, you see these newscasters, let's say on the Today Show, and they're all whatever, lying through their teeth about whatever subject, and you're like, well, I'm going to turn to Fox News. You go to Fox News, they're lying through their teeth too. Yeah. But they're all run by the same gang. Well, and they know that they're playing, they got you on coming and going.
The funniest thing is that, like, 10 years ago, we can all agree that the uniparty was real and it was an illusion of a choice, and it's picking the lesser of two evils is all we get as a choice. Like, can't we get a reasonable candidate that makes sense?
Never again.
And so we all knew that.
Yeah.
And then now you fast forward to today and you're just like...
Well, I think you had a lot more of a civil, world that we were in back then. And I think the start of the Trump era is where you really saw that it escalated. Well, to fake wrestling levels,
Yeah, because obviously to say that things that you're not supposed to say out loud riles a lot of the industry up because that was always their trade secrets. And if you're calling it out, you piss off a lot of people, And
but I think the locker up chants and all that, you didn't see that when these other people running. They might have not liked each other on TV, but in reality, they're all getting along. Yeah. But you didn't have a candidate chanting locker up about their opponent.
Yeah.
And get the audience involved, like fake wrestling stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then no one got locked up. Of course.
There may have been a little more a little bit more
dignified.
Yes.
But that's all gone now.
But it sure wasn't that way behind the scenes, of course,
Well, and I tattooed quite a few people that were behind the scenes, and all those people get along.
Yeah.
All those people are friends, you know. And a lot of other stuff that's scrubbed is after Hillary lost, the Bushes actually bailed her out. And there was articles at the time about this, but you Google it now.
Financially, you mean? Yeah. From the campaign?
Yeah. And I remember there's photos of them all hanging out and the Bush family standing with the Clinton family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all gone now. You can't find it.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing, too, when things get scrubbed. People don't realize that happens. That if they don't want you to find something, you're not going to find it.
Yeah, it's once again, it's almost like the illusion of a choice in voting is the illusion that you're getting all the information when you search Google.
Yeah,
and so
or any search engine.
So they could try a few of the other engines, and maybe other stuff comes up. I do that all the time. I'll try a few different ones just for fun or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But yes, the illusion that you're getting all the facts is you're not. And that's something that people, I think that's partially just like people just need to be aware.
Yes.
Because even the way that algorithm works and the things that pisses you off are kind of the things that it's going to show you because that's what you interact with. So it's not necessarily evil that these algorithms are trying to feed you the opposite view to try to sway your opinions. But when you interact and with those posts every time, you're telling that's the algorithm that's what you want to see. So that's the stuff that shows up.
Yeah, but I think that
some of them are better than others.
I think that there has to be like a Bill of Rights. Let's say if you're going to offer a search engine, it should not be able to be steering your thoughts to make you think certain ways or not see a full picture. And that needs to happen at some point. Or,
is it doing that or is it giving you what you want?
No, it's steering. It's definitely, it's definitely whitelisting things. So you'll never be able to see them if you search.
For sure.
It's not giving you an honest response.
Well, Facebook's probably the worst at that, I think.
Well, the worst you know of.
That
you don't know what you don't know.
That's true.
And the levels of manipulation with everything. If you're seeing it, it's being manipulated right now. That's it.
I mean, on one of my rant episodes, I was almost just going to go through my feed on Facebook and just put it up on the screen and look what I see when I go through here.
So an interesting example is the shooter just happened in Minneapolis. I saw my friends on the left saying the exact same things about the shooter, and I saw my friends on the right saying the exact same things, and they were both totally different.
Yeah.
And obviously the algorithms are showing these different people different things about the same exact thing.
Right.
Which is insane.
It's insane.
That it can't just be like everyone knows the exact same stuff.
Just give me the facts, and then we can have a conversation on what we think about this or whatnot.
Yeah, but literally, I mean, I was like seeing this happening, and I'm like, this is crazy. These people are saying he was a white supremacist. This is the white, I forget the terms, vigilante American that we need guns taken away from.
Yeah.
And then the ones on the right are saying, look, this is a trans person that was on SSRIs. They're all trans people that are killing all these people.
Yeah.
They both made like a police sketch of the person they think killed those kids, it would be two different people.
Oh, for sure.
And how is that happening? How is a population of people being given two totally different explanations of what happened of an event that literally is all documented?
I'm pretty careful with my words. Like I know words are forever, and I definitely don't want to purposely say things hateful or just to piss people off, or things like that, because it is forever, and a lot of times it's not necessary. But you can see the way they manipulate words and headlines and stuff. There's one thing, of course, newspapers always did that, right? So even back in the 30s, you got the Sun Times or the New York Times, and you're trying to sell newspapers on the corner. You want a headline that's going to catch somebody's attention and is going to make them pay the quarter for the paper or whatever the case may be. Were they always accurate headlines? Not necessarily. So is it any different because of clickbait and everybody's just looking for clicks? So like that's one of the things I've been doing is like now that's some clickbait garbage, and I'll put my little my little emoji of the garbage can and just say, hashtag clickbait, hashtag I will not click, because I just don't want to play that game. But when you see some of these headlines, it was almost like the 42 security experts that signed a letter that said that this looks like Trump. So you see how people can't even get those words right because they're not quoting it. And that people were pressured into signing that because the letter only said that it looks like this is something Russia would do.
Correct.
As a disinformation campaign.
Correct.
It never said it is.
Correct. And a lot of people missed that point.
41 people said this is a Russian. No, they didn't.
Exactly.
They just said this is the kind of thing that Russia would do.
Here's the lack of media where they just went right with it and fed into that, even though there's irrefutable facts where the FBI had that thing for a year, I think, before then.
Right.
And knew exactly what they had.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's again, these news sources are choosing to play ball and choosing to push, fake stories, whatever. That's where we're in now.
Well, in the old days, it worked. Just like some of the...
Well, it still is.
It works to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think there's a few people... I think... What percent of people do you think are critical thinkers that can see through it?
20?
Correct.
Maybe.
And do they need us? No. They got 80%. They don't need us.
Yeah.
So they don't care.
We're the ones that might vote, maybe, but it's still
again, they know.
Not enough.
They know, going back to that quote I said at the beginning of the interview here, is that they know. They know what percentage of people. If you watch that Century of the Self, they actually have ways of telling. They had like 5 types of personalities, and they know which one you fit into.
Oh, for sure. Profiling.
They know the whole world
just about
of who you are and which one you fit into and how to target you. And that was then.
Yeah.
So now it's probably 30%.
And how many black ops with CIA, operations, and so that's where you almost sound like you're getting into everything's a conspiracy. And I did have a friend that said, you don't have to question everything, and I'm like, you kind of do, and it's like until I find a source that hasn't lied to me enough, seems to be showing the receipts, seems to be reporting the facts, then I can trust them a little bit more. But I'm still never going to go with one source.
No.
I'm trying to find, and I mean,
but
most
people,
of them are
people
not.
tend to find the source that validates their opinion, and then I did my homework. I got a source,
right.
you know.
But to assume that the New York Times, that's the New York Times. I had a friend tell me that's the New York Times.
Yeah, I could demonstrate
you think
5
they're
ways
lying?
a Sunday to show you they're lying. You know,
I can show you, right. And so they just choose not to see that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but that's just, oh, well, you know, oh, well, you can't always get everything right, or maybe they were misled. Well, that's the journalist's job, is to fact check and to pull another source or whatever the case may be, and not just run with it. So
it used to be.
Who's a journalist? Who's not a journalist? Am I a journalist because I have a podcast? You know, do I have freedom of the press? You know, so those are all these weird questions, just like the AI, you know, giving credit to where credit is due in certain things. It's the same kind of scenario, but that's where the experts are saying.
So I think basically, you know, where we're left at then is just, you know, being. I was talking to someone about, you know, raising kids, you know, another time, I think it was a couple of days ago and stuff. And, you know, I was telling them that's the piece of the puzzle that is most important, is what happens in the home. You know what I mean? You have no control what happens to your kid at school. You have no control unless you choose what school to go to, but even then, you're limited. No control what they're being told by their friends, whatever, but you do have control of what you want to do at home, meaning teaching them to think for themselves, teaching them to not be that 80%, and hoping that they get that, you know, and seeing where they go with it.
Yeah.
You know, but it's hard when you have peer pressure, you know, like I can't teach my kids certain things because I don't want them to stand out and be, you know, ostracized by their teachers and stuff.
Well, that's where I was going to go. When you're teaching the truth, but the truth is, you probably should just keep your mouth shut in class, just so you can get your degree. It is not that, you know, that's where we need to try to have some sort of voice of reason, to where that's where I used to, I mean, part of the Flip Side Frolic premise and part of like what a debate class used to be is you were assigned the position and the topic. You didn't just get to argue with what you feel. Mm-hmm. And then Rene Descartes and some of the other, you know, do you really believe that you have a God-given right to an opinion? You really don't. And an uneducated opinion, the answer that should be coming out of people's mouths more often is, I don't have enough information on this subject to have an opinion right now. Just because you read 4 headlines from ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, wherever, doesn't give you a right to an opinion. I mean, you need to do a little bit of homework before you can draw an educated opinion. You know, you can have a first impression, but that shouldn't be spewed as though it was some sort of opinion. And
well, I think, you know, everyone has, you know, you're going to have an opinion regardless whether you have a right to have it or not. You're going to have one.
Yeah.
Now, being that you're human, you may be wrong.
That's fine.
And I think that as long as people understand, again, circling back to what I said earlier, how, you know, you can't just go through the world with these pre-established ideas to base your whole life on. You got to kind of keep your, you know, self open to new information. Things change. You might have believed this existed at one point. I mean, at one point, you know, look at the way women were looked at, or minorities, let's say, in this country, you know, and how that's evolved over the years.
Yeah.
And if you talk to somebody from that era, oh my God, they'd be steadfast on that. You know, they're not the people that walk the earth today.
No.
And so, just based on those examples, there's a lot of stuff that is more fluid than people think. And they think they have to have these rigid, you know, places for people and things in their world. Like, you are this, you are that, you are this. And that's how they stay sane, is they have this rigidity that lets them exist in this world. Where, you know, if you are more of a Sun Tzu, you know, like the reed in the wind, as he says in The Art of War, you know what I mean? You will be a better person for it, in my opinion, you know. But some people need to have that. They need to have that rock solid belief in things to stay sane.
Well, to have a belief structure and a moral compass, whether it comes from a church or comes from spirituality or comes from just somewhere inside you know what the right thing is. And if you can tap into that and self-evaluate enough to know that you're not purposely trying to wrong others.
But, what's right and wrong in one part of the world may not work in another. So that's fluid too.
Yeah. And your opinions can be as well. It doesn't make you a flip-flopper unless you're a politician that just looks at the polls and then decides what their opinions are before an election.
They don't even look at the polls. Somebody else does and tells them what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or so that's where, if I'm confident that just in 10 episodes on this podcast that I listened to somebody's argument and said, hey, wow, I never really thought about that way. And I may have changed my opinion right here live on the air, so to speak. And that's perfectly fine too,
Totally.
But that's the one thing about, the left versus the right on certain things, where if I don't agree with you on something, I can try to understand your perspective, but you're perfectly fine as an adult to believe whatever you want. Or to act however you want, or to love whoever you want, or to change your body however you want, whether it's piercings or tattoos or some surgeries or whatever the case may be, as an adult. So when we start talking about the kids, that's where most people are kind of like, that's where it gets into a lot of gray areas on what should and shouldn't happen in a lot of ways. But to go for somebody to disagree with my opinion on that, and then want to destroy me as a result of me having that opinion because I'm like the evil person that they need to stop, and they're going to call your employer and try to get you fired, or we're going to get signs and picket your store because you said something on a podcast, or that's craziness.
Well, that says more about them than you. And that's what I teach my kids is, hurt kids, meaning that if some kids are being mean to you that you don't know, doesn't know you, but they're being crazy and mean to you, that says more about them than you. You didn't do anything wrong.
Most of the time, the bully just needs a friend, right?
Or, I don't even know what they need.
Yeah.
But I'm not the one to do that. I'm not their psychotherapist or their whatever. You know what I mean? But they need one, but I'm not it. And the same goes for, people that feel this need to cancel people.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of people want to say like these crazy liberals are up in arms about this and that, or these crazy whatevers. And you know what? And what I see a good-hearted person. And I see somebody who genuinely cares about the issue. Let's say these people downtown protesting the war in Ukraine, or what's happening in Israel, or Trump, or whatever they want to protest. I think these are genuinely good-hearted people. And they may not have the same beliefs as me. They may not see things the same way as me, but they're doing it. 99% of them are doing it out of being a good-hearted person. You're going to have that person who's going to be chaos and wants just a reason to go out there and break shit.
Yeah, the anarchists and the troublemakers and the extremists on the left, the extremists
I'm not talking
on the right.
about them.
Right. We're talking most of the people
that are good-hearted people and don't want to see what they consider to be a bad thing happening. I applaud them.
The problem, though, is that the powers that be understand the power of propaganda.
100%.
And so
whether those people are being propagandized and being there for the wrong reason, that's not what I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to the reason they're there in the first place. And that's because they care about this issue, and they really do genuinely
Anybody
care.
that takes an action to try to change something they disagree on is usually a person that's doing something for the right reasons or willing to take some action and be, instead of just sit around. It's almost like as a union member, I could not be the guy that's sitting around complaining about the job and then not show up to the meeting.
Yeah.
So it's
or,
like,
hey, how about this? Don't work there. You know what I mean? That's what I would teach my
there's
kids.
A free market choice.
To my friends, just don't go there.
But
don't be there.
Don't come here and sit around complaining. And if you're not going to be a part of the solution, then you're a part of the problem. So,
but that's another thing that people lack is the ability to act. You know what I mean? If you don't like the way something is, do something about it.
Right.
Change it.
Or at
speak
least
up.
Be willing to have a conversation and be willing to try to stay focused on solutions.
Yeah.
So it's almost comical because even 15, 20 years ago, the rule was like, no religion and no politics at the dinner table for Thanksgiving or whatever.
Yeah, right. That never happened at my house.
Like people try to do that, but it's
Yeah.
like, what are you actually saying? You're saying that you like censorship then. Like I can't have.
Well, I think
a
they want to have.
discussion.
I think they just want to have a peaceful meal.
Well,
they're trying to.
That's exactly right. And
there's a place for things, let's say, and they're saying that that's not the place.
So it's like my perspective was always like, I want to talk to my friends and family about some of these issues because
I want your own dinner.
I want to check myself. I want to see where you're coming from. I want to understand how and then as a group, as a family, as a community, if we vote as a cohesive, group, we have more power instead of just being an individual, And the problem is that it usually it always derives into those purposely driven topics that are designed to deny or divide. Mm-hmm. Instead of, if we can just stay focused on some solutions and some ideas that what can we do to fix this?
Yeah.
Then usually the conversation stays on a little bit more sane plane. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if it is TDS syndrome or whatever it is, that it's like, you brought it up again. I'm not even talking about that guy. Why do you keep bringing it up if you hate him so much? I'm trying to stay focused on a solution. Yeah. And so sometimes that they fall into that. Yeah. But, the people on both sides of the war usually think they're fighting for the right reasons in some ways, unless it's just a mercenary army that's, forced consignments, or which is kind of happening
you're talking about
both sides.
You're going back to the 80% now.
Yeah.
You're going to the people that let the thoughts be given to them.
Yeah.
That don't have any kind of personal
skin in the game,
they don't analyze, they just go with the tribe. The tribe says this, let's do it, I'm on board. And that's that personality type. That's that type of person. Well,
and in their defense, in a sense, who has time to research every little thing? And if I can't trust this media that I'm supposed to be able to trust, and I'm working 2 jobs just trying to feed my kids, and people they don't have time to just sit around and host a dinner and talk to people for 3 hours or whatever the case may be.
But, then it comes down to being honest, is saying, I don't have time to do this. You know what I mean? And this is what I was told, and this is what I believe, and that's where I'm at. Because I work 2 jobs, and I don't have time to do that. That's the honest.
Well, and then if it's authentic,
yeah, that's the honest stance to be on. But it's hard to admit that and say I'm an automaton and I don't think for myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're not going to say that. But that.
Just vote straight Democrat. That's how I was always told.
Totally. But that, and that's why they are the way they are. Yeah. So again, do you need to push that issue because that's who you're dealing with? It's not going to help anything, by making someone feel cornered and, trying to belittle them by saying that, listen, you do this, you don't have time to do all that. And I know that, it's not going to make anything better.
No.
So no conversations like that have to happen. You're choosing to make them happen. And if it's inappropriate to choose, for the sake of trying to stay a relative or a friend with somebody, then just don't pursue it.
Yeah.
Let it be.
Yeah, right. You don't have that's not important.
Well, and it's also not going to change anything.
Right.
So you're going to find people in your life that are more open and have time to do these things, and those are the people maybe to have those conversations with. And the people that don't, that just are trying to be good people and trying to get by, let them be.
Yeah.
Let them have it.
That's the cost. That's part of freedom too.
But with again, I keep saying with my kids, and it's true. I keep telling them, it's free to try. If you don't like the outcome of something, you want to change it, fucking do it. Why not?
Yeah. What's the worst thing that can happen if you're well, that's one of the little taglines from some other stuff, but it's like, I'm responsible for the effort, not the result. Mm-hmm. So if I feel that I've tried and I did my best or whatever, and it is what it is, then maybe I swayed a few people. So sometimes on those pokey comments, or if you're trolling a little bit and you just kind of throw that other question in there, or maybe provide a fact that maybe they haven't seen, you think that you're not going to change that person's mind, and that's probably true, But there might be 100 people that read that comment that might be on the fence too. So that's the weird thing about social media, that sometimes when I'm commenting on somebody's post, it might not even be for that person.
No, I've definitely been that person for quite a few people, and I've definitely opened some people's eyes to things they didn't even know were there.
Yeah.
And people have done that for me too, you know, but you have to be open to that. You have to be able to like be receptive, and you have to have no heroes. Because the people you hold the highest, you may find, are not great people.
Yeah.
So
no, it's very possible.
You gotta be willing to swallow that pill. You know, you gotta be willing to say like, "What, that guy? Oh man, no." You know.
But that's where the authenticity and the credibility is going to be stronger, because somebody's like, he was humble enough to say, "Yeah, I backed that horse, and it wasn't the best thing."
So,
or
an example of this is in the pool world. There's a player from America who is the number one dog in America. This guy, Shane Van Boning. And people regard him as being like the savior of America. Because in the world field of players, he stands out. You know, there's no one even in America close to him. And he was banging a 15-year-old. And it all came out when she was 16. And people don't like to talk about it. And if there will be a pool forum or a chat group, whatever, on Facebook, and you post about that, your post is gone. And so making this choice to keep the blinders on, you know, because if this guy was a low-level player, banish. You'd never see him again.
Right.
He'd be gone. But because he's the number one player, the blinders are on. And it's crazy. It's crazy to see people just like, really? Like, you'd be the first person to scream about R. Kelly or Michael Jackson, any of these people, but here it is in your living room, and you're gonna shut the fuck up, and because this is our savior. This is our best American player out there, you
right?
know?
You're gonna accept the lesser of two evils again. You know, like, oh, I'm willing to not look at that little thing because the big
which is a big thing if it's somebody else.
Yeah,
but because it's him, now it's a little thing.
It's like reasonable loss in a war. It's almost there's that we justify a certain amount of deaths for the cause, and again that's kind of the same kind of thing, but
even amongst pros, I have never seen a pro is the one that called him out, a fellow pro, and made a Facebook post about it, which I have. And I know people that were in those circles that witnessed all this happening firsthand. And yet this guy is still, surrounded by pros. No one's ever.
And that was at what age? It was
15. And he was like 40 or 30. He was like mid-30s.
Okay. Well,
but I've never seen any pro speak out about it. I've never seen any pro, whether they have kids that are 15 or not, refuse to deal with them. He's heralded as the number one player.
Yeah.
So even in those levels, I see this, and it drives me crazy. It's like, you can give people, here it is. It's undeniable. No one's denying it. And yet, so you can take that into every other, whether it's politics, movie stars, whatever. You can take it to any level.
Yeah.
And
they know if they say something, they're going to be out of the clique, right? And so
whether they will, no one's brave enough to be the one.
Right.
To start, one guy was the guy that posted it, and he got, persona non grata after that.
It's like that one Facebook video with the guy, just giving hugs or dancing or whatever, where it's like, it's the first one that really takes the courage to get out there and start dancing. And then everybody's looking at him like, look at that silly fool. And then one or two more people get in, and then everybody starts going in, and everybody has fun. So it's like the bravery of the people that stand out of the herd is that rarity.
Yeah, I'll always throw that snowball. I'll always do it. There's no heroes, dude.
I'm fine with that.
I will always,
I hear you.
if I find out this about this person, whatever, I'm out. Fuck them.
Hopefully you do your homework so you're not in a slandering situation where, because obviously, like in politics, that's the game plan. Like, I'm running against you. I got a buddy somewhere at some 3-letter agency, and I can say, hey, start an investigation on this guy, and then I'm not lying when the media says he's under an indictment because of this.
Well, being under an indictment and being guilty are two different things.
I think that, negative campaign ads, I kind of told myself, if I ever see a negative campaign ad about the opposite person in the party, I'm not voting for that person. Well, that's great for Carl, but I'm not the 90% that's going to make a difference.
But you got to do some Googling too, because a lot of that stuff would be taken like they said this, but then you look at it in context and it has a totally different
and that's
people
propaganda because it's purposeful misleading based on what you consider the facts, or because you put a ... in there and chopped out the middle of the sentence or whatever the case may be, and most people are going to fall for that, and it's not great, So maybe you could. But
a lot of them fall for it willingly. Like they hate this person because they've been taught to hate that person.
Right.
And they want to believe it.
Right. And
you could show them the entire quote. You could show them everything and they still don't like that. And they'll literally say, that's fine, but I still don't like that person.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what I mean? It's not fine.
I was trying to show evidence and I was directly told, fuck you and your facts.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
I guess
at no
this
point,
conversation's over.
But at no point will they say like, that's fucked up. I can't believe they would manipulate people like that. Never. They'll always say, well, I still hate that person. Well, you're not mad that you were just manipulated, that these people lied to you?
Yeah.
That they purposely lied to you.
And if I'm brainwashed, I'm trying to listen to the perspective, and maybe I can agree with you if it makes sense, but then a lot of times the receipts aren't there. It's just accusations and name calling. And it's like, that's not going to sway my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, do you have anything worth sharing that might? So like if I can search myself and say, if I can't find anything positive about this other person, then I'm probably under the influence of some sort of propaganda. Mm-hmm. Right. So is there anything positive that you could say? And when they can't, you might have to check yourself there, because there can't be all bad. And especially in this political realm where we all know politics is dirty. We don't have to be conspiracy theorists to think that there's not people out there that are paying people to try to get you in a gotcha statement or something. You don't think that the DNC or the RNC will slip somebody into that locker room at the country club and start throwing around some slang terms enough to where if you think you're the mirroring neurons start clicking in and you just want to be a part of the herd. So then all of a sudden you say one of those slanderous things because there's 3 other people doing it. Now we got you. Mm-hmm. And they're going to give you $30,000 cash if you could get them somebody saying the N word or whatever the case may be, just to destroy this person, because that's the competition. And it's just don't hate the player, hate the game kind of mentality, that it's, all's fair in love and war, or that's just politics or whatever. And it sucks because, but the person shouldn't have said that word, or, all these different things.
But I think it all circles back to put your phone down, turn off your TV and leave your house. Like when 2020 was happening, all the crazy chaos, all the crazy racial stuff, I take my kids to the park. And there all us dads would be, or all us moms of all different backgrounds, and all of our kids would be playing, and we're all cool.
Yep.
You sit at home, watch TV, you'd think everyone was out to kill each other. You go to the park, not the case.
Right.
Or I go to the pool hall, play my tournament, none of it comes up. Right. We're all there to play pool. We're all having a great time.
Yeah.
All of us are getting away from our wives. We're awesome. But, a little break.
Yeah.
And we're all there, and we're all doing our thing. You go to a concert. You do whatever. And I just think that that's more than ever what people need in this world is a break from that shit.
Well, in some ways, it's like sports and all these different things are a distraction from the real world. But there's certain
if you're
things,
sitting there watching, but if you're participating and you're getting out of that stuff and getting out amongst strangers in the real world, that's a great thing.
And then also...
And that's what we need more of.
Like one thing, Rogan, he just had Fedor on as well. So that was an interesting conversation. For if somebody was into pool, listen to that.
You should see the comments, because a lot of people are not. I was reading the comments, like, this is hilarious.
Yeah, and they're funny. But the one thing that, like, he points out, even with archery or pool or some of those other things that he's into, that if you're focusing so hard on exactly what you're doing, you're not thinking about anything else. So that is, in a sense, a meditative state that clears your head of all that other garbage that's floating around all day. if you don't have a time or a place or an outlet to just get away from that, then
you're
that
taking
shit
over,
snowballs and it does drive you crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
But unfortunately, like I said, the large segment of society has found themselves where that they don't have anybody. They have no one to connect to.
Yeah.
And they're relying on, they know what they're doing with these things. They know how to make things addictive. They know how to make, you hooked on, what they want you to be looking at and doing on that stuff.
Yeah. The science is,
so
they're spending.
My kids, they know as soon as I get home, I'm yelling, put that shit away. Yeah, I just get on it, Dad. Nope, put it away. Let's work on this.
It's such a balance because obviously, even if you try to set limits on screen times and then certain things, because it's like, there's certain principles that, like, okay, you try to have a set bedtime or whatever, and then it's like, I'll open the door and they're reading a paper book.
That's great.
I'm like,
keep it up. Nope, I'm not going to
stay here. Have a good, take all the time you need, and they know that. So hopefully they're not, manipulating me and switching or whatever. But you got to watch for that too, of course. Mm-hmm. But like, no, if you're sitting there reading a graphic novel or anything, I don't care.
You know what my brother did? He changed the Wi-Fi password without telling them, so then they couldn't get on the internet. They're like, Dad.
Well, that's where we could get into like, helicopter parenting and Abigail Schreier and some of these other parenting ideas and different things that, the old days of just get on your bikes and get out of this house and I don't want to see you for 3 hours. Yeah. There's some positive of just exploring and going around and just being outside or whatever the case may be too, where everything doesn't have to necessarily be helicoptered to the point that, but they have these family apps and, Family Link is a pretty good one with I think it's with Google. Yeah. That I can just shut their phone off and at certain times. And then, 10 seconds later, they're calling, hey, can I have 50 more minutes? So no. Sometimes you got to say no. It's the power of no.
I say it all the time.
Yeah, even if it's something stupid that don't matter. It's like you got to just say no because it can't always be yes, of course.
Correct.
And those are some of the things that they appreciate the yes more so or whatever. What are you working on? And that's where all these hobbies and all these different things and all these trying to find those passions. Like my son's like kind of looking into electrical engineering or structural engineering or material engineering. And it was funny because I had this story. I just went to another club last week. Is the shout out to the Chicago FM club, their ham radio club in the area, and again, great group of guys on an art or on a hobby that's so old. A lot of elderly people more so. So trying to get some of the youth into that hobby because it's interesting that innovation usually comes from hobbyists. It doesn't come from the corporations and the scientific research studies and all these. A lot of times people just assume that that's where things come from. But when you're enjoying a hobby of radio broadcasting or transmitting from your basement and you're playing around with different antennas, the cell phone antenna that doesn't have to be pulled out of the Motorola flip phone, the way that they designed the antenna to be internal and still work well, that was a ham radio hobbyist that came up with that design, And so people tinkering around in their basements, even if it's with CRISPR or some of this other craziness sometimes, those are kind of the people that are going to kind of innovate and come up with these new ideas and these new designs, I think more so than some of the corporate researchers, because they're just doing, they're just doing focus groups and all this, trying to come up with new ideas or whatever. But so the ham radio interest, the basic book to get your ham radio license starts pretty basic and says if you want to know how a radio works, you have to kind of know how a computer works because it's kind of, and then so it starts off by talking about AC and DC current and what each of these electrical components do and what an IC circuit actually is, and everything's an on-off switch, and then you get into sending data packets through the wireless internet, the air through these radio waves. It's like, it's fascinating, and I don't necessarily have a full grasp and understanding of exactly how it works definitely people know more than me, but that's the same thing where if you had questions and you go into a club atmosphere like that, you're still going to have that altruistic willingness to help and help you understand and explain things. And if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room kind of mentality. You know, like if you're the best pool player in the room, maybe you should find a better room, because how challenged are you going to be? Are you getting better by just stomping on some of the new guys? Probably not.
Well, it's a good problem to have if you have it.
Yeah, right. But yeah, those are just some of those basic things.
But that speaks to everything.
Yeah.
You should always be pushing yourself and trying to be surrounded by the best people.
And that's where even some of the hate sometimes comes from. I think that people, if somebody's really good at organizing that team, that's like a lot of the Elon hate. Like, he doesn't actually build those cars, like he doesn't actually build the rockets. He's got teams. But if you have the vision and you had the idea and you had the initial willingness to take the risk, and you brought in the best people in the world on your team that were smarter than you to make this happen, it sure as hell wouldn't have happened if you never did it.
But I mean, honestly, I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know if he created anything. I don't know if he's an actor. I don't know.
It's
And a lot of people that are put in front of you, they're playing a role. They're not who they profess to be. And with the people that run things, the people that are the real people behind things, they don't want you to know who they are. They stay in the shadows. You get the puppets they want you to see. Who the hell... Look at the Elon thing in the light of who wants to go out. When you want to go out and be anonymous, you can't be. You're a huge public figure. You're a slave to that now. So who would want that? So the people that, I think they've talked about actually on Joe Rogan, they talk about that richest people in the world list and how these people in Saudi Arabia are laughing like they're trillionaires. Like,
because they don't have to disclose.
Yeah, but you heard that too. Yeah, so that's what I mean. I mean, there's people that, in the city that run things. There was a text message from Brandon Johnson got leaked where he was responding to somebody who said something, "I'm waiting to hear back from the elders." Come on. You know what I mean? These people that really run the business. You think Brandon Johnson's come up with anything? He's an idiot.
Kamala?
Or Lightfoot. Yeah, Kamala. These people are all just puppets.
Yeah.
And, you play your role. You got out of office. You have a position on a board paying 6 figures waiting. You have ambassadorship.
Yeah.
Some BS.
The revolving door. You
get conflicts. Some BS. You play your role for 4 years on the public screen, and then you get lifetime being taken care of.
Right.
So any of these people you see, most of them are just puppets.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, you have to feel bad for them. They chose that life. I know people that knew Lightfoot when she was a prosecutor. They were police. They knew her. And they say that person that was on TV was not the person they knew.
Sure.
They worked with this person for years when she was a prosecutor. And then they saw the mayor Lightfoot. It's a totally different person.
Yeah.
It's obvious to us.
I can imagine. And the interesting thing is that that's bad enough in itself, but then those are at least elected officials, and then you have
in the most crooked place in the world. Are they elected?
Well, but then behind this, you have the group like you're talking about that have been in Washington for 50 years and aren't elected positions.
Yeah.
When they're the heads of these organizations and these different things that, and it's just bizarre because everybody agreed that the swamp was dirty, and then.
But speaking of all this is good. So, a great documentary is one called The Money Masters. It's from the 90s, and it's kind of like the history of banking and who really runs the world. And in it are a bunch of presidential quotes. So, it'll be one thing if one president said this type of stuff. When you have multiple presidents all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Here's one from James Garfield. Whoever controls the volume of money in any country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. And when you realize that the entire system is very easily controlled one way or another by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have you'll have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate. So as a president, okay, that's one. Let's see here.
That's like...
Here's Wilson. How do I get this thing? I fucked it up. Get out of there. There we go. Here's Woodrow Wilson. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled governments in the civilized world. No longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so wasteful, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they have better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. It's a president talking in fear of this group of people. Theodore Roosevelt. These international bankers and Rockefeller Standard Oil interests control the majority of newspapers and the columns of these papers to club into submission or drive out of public office officials who refuse to do the bidding of the powerful corrupt cliques which compose the invisible government. So these are presidents. These are not, run-of-the-mill people, and they're all saying the same thing. The people that really run things.
Well, I think that you can have all the good intentions in the world, and then it's almost like, as far as like, even let's talk local Chicago politics. That was,
But that's fallen prey to this now.
Yeah, it's
or
all
now they
that's
have
at
these,
the top. So obviously it gets worse.
But it goes deeper. It's permeated local politics everywhere. I have a friend who's a teacher in Idaho, and he was telling me about the crazy amount of money that went into school board elections out there. School board officials have more power than anybody else in the school system. They can fire a principal. They can control the whatever the school, the what's being taught, everything.
Curriculum, funding,
school, totally. And so here he is in this smaller town in Idaho, and it's school board election time, and he's like, I have never seen anything like this. He had been a teacher there for 20 years. He's like, there is insane money pouring in. The
from outside the district, from outside the state, from outside the country, who knows?
Control the school board in this town.
Yeah.
And if anybody speaks up in defiance, or anybody, they are crushed. They will go after. He said there's fake Facebook groups being made in their town that are saying things about these teachers and these principals that isn't true. Yeah. But they get the parents riled up. They get elected in on lies. And now they can hire and fire who they want. So if that's happening in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, you better believe it's happening here.
Yeah, the bots are an obvious problem that most people don't even understand they exist. So they see all these people commenting, and they get in arguments with these people, and then you click on their account and they got 4 friends, or, it's like, gosh, please don't engage in these people.
But when it comes to local politics and who's getting elected in these local races, they're not doing it independently like, hey, I'm Joe Blow and I don't like what's happening in my neighborhood. I'm going to run for alderman. You can't get ahead. Right. You don't have the funding. These people come in, they got the backing of these groups. So the permeation of this to a local level is unprecedented.
Well, and it was just like the tactic back in the day was, even, you don't have to win, you just have to get on the ballot. And if you do the legwork and do the door knocking and get enough signatures to get on the ballot, then they end up buying you off or something, or offering you a position at ComEd or something if you withdraw from the election for family reasons.
So here's a good one you can look up. So when Rahm was running for mayor, there was one lady who was running against him who was polling really well. What the hell was her name? But she had worked for Clinton. I'll think of her name in a minute. Carol Moseley Braun. She was polling really well against Rahm, okay? Well, what happened? 10 black candidates show up on the ballot to split the black vote. Amazing, huh? Now one other white candidate. Now this is where it gets good. In order to run, you have to have a petition with a certain number of signatures, and it has to be notarized. It has to be notarized, right? Yeah. You can look this up. All their petitions came back as forged. The notaries were faked. They were still allowed to run. The city saw that this was the case and still allowed them to run because they were serving a function, and it worked. It split the black vote. Rahm gets in. Flash to the next election. You've got Lightfoot, Preckwinkle, and there's another lady, Patricia Van Pelt, that's going to run, right? She's not approved to run. Well, guess what happened? Her petition was seen as being faked, her notarization.
Somebody initialed Chicago or didn't write the whole word out.
She was not allowed to run.
Count.
So in the other election, you can still run because you're serving a function of splitting the black vote. This election, you're a threat. You're not allowed to run. How the rules change based, like I was saying earlier, you know what I mean?
Well, and that's the most obvious thing.
You've got shit sandwich A or B. You got Preckwinkle or Lightfoot. They're both serving the same master. It doesn't matter who wins.
Right.
Lightfoot won, fine. Still got done what they wanted to get done. But if this Patricia Van Pelt had won, she was not on board, so obviously she had to go. And that's what I'm saying is your choices are you're never going to have a Harold Washington again. You're never going to have a Daley again. You're never going to have somebody who is an independent thinker. You're only going to get these people that are part of the system.
Well, that's the interesting thing, too, that God forbid you have somebody that runs on the idea of breaking this machine.
But that's the thing is they'll back that candidate because they're full of shit.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're going to get, I mean, just look at Trump. You know, how many times you hear him, lock her up. I get Hillary's going to jail. She didn't go to jail. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the interesting thing. In the first term, he didn't pursue it, even though he threatened it because it would set a bad precedent. And then,
but they all do it though.
Right.
They all, promise the world or say they're the one that's going to change this, and then they say, "Oh, I wish I could, but X, Y, and Z, I can't do it."
Yeah,
but that got you into office.
Or when you sit down once you're elected and people have a conversation with you, and obviously they're like, "This is the way it works around here." Mm-hmm. Or whatnot. And then who knows? Maybe there's threats. Maybe there's this. Maybe they're showing pictures of your kids going to school.
Yeah.
Who knows what kind of... I mean, and we see all kinds of movies and all this other stuff, but to think that none of that happens, well, then you're just naive.
Correct.
Does it happen with everybody? No. And it's the same thing that, are all politicians corrupt? No. But unfortunately, the 10% make the most noise and control the purse strings, so that drowns out anybody. Or like the one example of like if you're a local senator or congressman or whatever, and you're pushing for a bill for your constituents, and you've been working to get this on the floor for 3 years. You finally got it on the floor and they tack some earmark on about some abortion thing. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden you vote for your bill, and then there's a $27 million campaign showing how you're voting for abortion or whatever the case may be.
Well, the real version of that is this. There's a great podcast called Congressional Dish. This woman, all she does is she reads all the bills and tells you what's in them. But she did one episode, and she does get a little slandered sometimes on one side or another. And, I'm not a fan of all of everything she says, but her work is very honest. And one thing she did was when the DNC and the RNC happened, she interviewed a lot of these people, and she has an episode where it's 2 Democrat congressional members and 2 Republicans. And she interviews all of them in one episode, all 4. And they all say the same thing. Here's how it works. You want to get that bridge in your district, you want to get federal funding, you vote yes on all this stuff that you don't even read.
Yeah.
They hand it to you, you sign it.
Yeah.
And then when you get your thing on the floor, like you said, it gets funded. But if you don't play ball and you don't sign on to all this stuff, you're not getting anything.
Right.
And they all talk about it.
Right.
You can listen to all 4 of these interviews, and you wouldn't even have to know what party they're in because it doesn't matter. That's the way it happens. And then, they can come to you and say, well, you voted for this bill. And yeah, I did, because that's the only way I get this new park in my neighborhood or this funding for this bridge to get fixed.
Right.
That's the game.
But you'll never hear that.
So they might not be corrupt in the sense that they're taking payoffs or whatever to do something, but they're in a corrupt system.
Well, like Sposato is, in my local district here, was a grassroots guy that was a fireman that got...
I know he is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great guy. And I had people that were like, he's too much of a Boy Scout. He's never going to get anything done early on. Because if you don't play the game, you're not going to get anything done. So you can't be all good, in a sense, in order to get anything done. And I believe he stuck to his ground and kind of made it through that to where he figured out and got enough support from other people and was able to get some stuff done, and is a great voice. And he took out Daley's limo driver, who was Banks, which was in the New York Times as one of the biggest upsets in election history, in a sense.
But I'm sure even him, even if you ask him, he'll admit it. Had to hold his nose a couple times and vote yes on a couple things that he didn't want to vote yes on.
Well, and just like everything, you're kind of trying to take the lesser of two evils or whatever. But why do these bills have to be so complicated? Why do they have to be?
Because they don't write them. They're written by
organizations,
corporations,
ALEC, or all these legislative think tanks or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. We'll figure it out eventually. We'll fix it one way or another. If not, focus on our pool games and
tattoos. There you go.
Tattoos and pool.
Child rearing, husbanding, tattooing, and playing pool.
And neighbors. Think globally, act locally. That's kind of the game plan, right?
That's why I'm here.
When's the last time national law really changed anything to actually benefit your life in some ways, Sometimes we got to ask that stuff. But if you stick around locally and at least get a park redone by your neighborhood that your kids can play at, well, obviously that's helpful. I don't mind paying taxes as long as I see something getting done. But when I have to pay half to get my sidewalk fixed.
Believe me, that's a whole nother episode. We don't have time for today.
We'll come back for that. Any plugs? You got your website?
Yeah, Deluxe Tattoo.
Deluxe Tattoo in Chicago.
And been there for 28 years and still going. New talent all the time. Great times. Very happy. We just had a whole System of a Down, Avenged Sevenfold tattoo thing happened this last week that was insane.
Nice.
So always something new and exciting happening.
Cool.
Yes. Come on in. We'll take care of you.
Come on. Music, everything. Social media, is anything you want to plug? Any?
Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Twitter.
Nice.
Get myself in trouble saying stuff every day.
God bless. That's what it's there for. We gotta fight the bots.
Yeah. But cover ups, love them. Bring me all your challenges. Let's go.
All right. Well, we got a few gifts for you, and then we'll let you get out of here. And we enjoy it, and for sure we'll do it again, my brother.
Thank you.
It's great seeing you. We got a challenge coin for you.
Oh, great.
I'll make sure that this is the right one there.
If you're seeing their face on the internet, don't believe them. They're full of shit.
That could be the case.
Unless it's this guy. He's for real.
Well, I try. All right, guys. We'll catch you later, and catch you on the next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us at Flipside Frolic. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and maybe learned a little something about other people's perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and throw us a like on the video. Comment if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next episode.